Dr. Hicks, can you hear us? Dr. Hicks, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Perfect, thank you.
I'm telling you what, throwing all these.
Call this 8 July 2021 meeting of the Bedford County School Board to order. As a side note, we had to go deep into the bench to the former chair. Our vice chair is on vacation and our chair is running late, so I'm coming off the bench for a little bit until Jason gets here. Ms. Johnson, please call the roll.
Mr. Johnson? Ms. Hairston?
Here.
Dr. Hicks?
Yeah.
Mr. Hill?
Here.
Mr. Leamy?
Here.
Dr. Mealy?
Here.
Mrs. Kirby? Mr. Leamy, there is a quorum present.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion to allow board members to participate remotely in the regular meeting in accordance with BCS policy BDD?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I have a motion by Dr. Mealy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Hill. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that, but I want to, no, for the agenda.
Okay.
I want to, for the consent agenda,
Yes.
I would like to vote separately on 7.06 outside of the all at one time.
Okay. I have a motion to amend the agenda to consider item 7.06 separate from the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hairston. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, item 7.06 will be considered separate from the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Hill. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Mealy. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the amended agenda is approved. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we go into closed session pursuant to Code of Virginia 2.2-3711A1 to discuss the assignment, appointment, performance, discipline, and release of contract for specific school board employees. That's it.
Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Hill. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Ms. Hairston. Discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, we're now in closed session.
I believe there's something in there. Yeah.
play with it again.
Yeah.
My apologies for the delay earlier. I found out lately about a little health issue, so I feel like I'm moving in slow motion right now, but it's good to be back. So do we have a motion to come out of closed session?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we come out of closed session.
All right, we have a motion by Dr. Mealy to come out of closed session. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Leamy. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none. We are back in open session. That is a great question. Is Dr. Hicks back? Yes, okay, great. All right, Ms. Johnson, would you please certify? Yes, sir. All right, great, thank you, sir. All right, Ms. Johnson, would you please certify closed session?
Whereas the Bedford County School Board has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote and in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act. And whereas Section 2.2-3712D of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by this school board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Bedford County School Board hereby certifies that, to the best of each member's knowledge, only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification applies, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion convening the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Dr. Hicks?
Yes.
Thank you.
So, no action on closed session items tonight, okay? So at this point, we will move into the public portion of our meeting with item 3.01, history curriculum update. And I do want to apologize for the confusion earlier about tonight's meeting being closed, and want to thank WSET for very promptly correcting that in the story as soon as it was brought to their attention. So for the public portion of the meeting, Dr. Woodford, history curriculum update.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. We're happy to share an update with you on changes to the history curriculum from kindergarten through 12th grade that has been implemented by the Virginia Department of Education tonight. Tonight, I would like to explain the difference between critical race theory and culturally responsive teaching, which has really been the center of a lot of some misinformation across the state. And in addition, I will share the new training, the updated history standards of learning in Virginia that is going to be implemented this school year, and share some of the work from the African American History Education Commission that has been working over the last 2 years. Before I share anything, I would like to define CRT. To some, that may stand for critical race theory, but in Virginia, and specifically in Bedford County, it means culturally responsive teaching. Critical race theory is a term that was first used in the 1970s at the Harvard Law School as a legal term that offers a framework for understanding systematic racism and seeks to examine and evaluate our systems, for instance, law, policy, finance, healthcare, housing, and it seeks to examine how race and systematic racism is ingrained in those systems. Critical race theory is not an academic curriculum, and it is not being taught through any of the updated Virginia history SOLs. Many have cited that critical race theory is the basis for all work with adults and students that is being done with inclusion and diversity, which is not true. What the state history SOLs and the education leaders at the Virginia Department of Education and we in Bedford County Schools are promoting is a culturally responsive teaching and practices. This way of teaching engages learners by respecting their cultural integrity. It accommodates the dynamic mix of race, ethnicity, class, gender, region, religion, and family that contributes to every student's cultural identity. Culturally responsive teaching, CRT, attempts to bridge the gap between teachers and student by helping the teacher understand the cultural nuances that shape a student. Cultural competency and equitable practices are essential for teachers to achieve success in the Commonwealth's increasingly diverse schools. Therefore, the Virginia Board of Education has set a new expectation that teachers and administrators be evaluated on cultural competencies. In March of this year, new legislation added cultural competency as an additional standard to the teacher evaluation system. In the spring of 2022, the state plans to release teacher training that will be required for teachers and administrators. In addition, training for the updates to the history SOLs will also be provided to history teachers. Examples of teacher work and practices aligned with the new cultural competency standard include disaggregating assessment data, behavioral data, attendance data by student subgroups, identifying and applying differentiated strategies to address growth and learning needs of all students, and specifically those students in gap groups, fostering classrooms that create opportunities to assess achievement by acknowledging, valuing, and advocating and affirming cultural and social diversity in all aspects of learning, including thinking about gender, race, ethnicity, English language learners, and our students with disabilities. And building on meaningful relationships with all students, anchored in affirmation, respect, and validation by employing culturally responsive teaching practices and by modeling high expectations for all of our students. On August the 24th, 2019, Governor Northam signed Executive Order 39, establishing the Commission on African American History Education in the Commonwealth. The governor tasked the commission with thoroughly examining Virginia's history standards and professional development practices with the goal of improving the way African American history is taught in Virginia schools. Commission members included university professors, historians, advocates, school board members, faith leaders, and K-12 educators from across the Commonwealth. I am proud to mention that our very own Crystal DeLong served on this commission at the state level. Executive Order 39 tasked the Commission with issuing a report no later than September 1st, 2020 with recommendations including, but not limited to, technical edits and recommendations for enriched standards related to African American history, a broader consideration for the full history and social studies standards and a review process of them, and the necessary professional development and instructional supports for teachers to ensure culturally competent instruction. The following year, the Commission met and formed subgroups that then made recommendations for K-12 curriculum edits and additions that created a more inclusive language, covers diverse backgrounds, and highlight African American landmarks and historical figures. As I shared with you earlier today in email, you will see the redlined edits that will be implemented this fall in all of our K-12 classrooms that the Commission suggested. Based on the information from the Commission and from the Virginia Department of Education, Bedford County Schools will be doing the following this school year. We will implement all of the updated history SOLs in K-12 classrooms this school year. All of these updates have already been incorporated into our pacing guides and will be the focus of training in August when our teachers return. While there are many edits, I want to share just a few examples of what you can expect in the changes. As I said earlier, I shared the full document with you, which is located on the Department of Education website, but just a few pullouts just so you can see a little bit of what some of the changes are. So for instance, in the kindergarten K3 SOL, Juneteenth, June 19th is added as a holiday. and an event and a tradition along with Martin Luther King Jr. Day, Thanksgiving, President's Day. In second grade, you'll see that there's just some language changes. Rather than saying Martin Luther King Jr. worked, we use the word advocated. And then we just noted, or the DOE noted, that he was an important leader at the civil rights movement who fought to end racial segregation. So the red places that you will see in your curriculum crossover guide that I sent today are the additions or changes. And you will see that throughout that document, it's a lot about language. It's a lot about information. It's about clarifying information. So this is just an example of an upper grade level, U.S. History 2, and Virginia U.S. History. And again, it's becoming much more specific, and it's giving specific information and truths about our history that are important for our students to understand. And so those are just a few examples of some of the edits you'll see in that crossover document and some of the information that will be taught this fall to our students. In addition, this year, we're offering the elective African American History course at all 3 high schools. And I want you to know that this African American History course has been in our program of studies over a decade. What we did in the fall was we really emphasized to our students that the curriculum was changing in this course, and we really wanted them to try out this course and see what it had to offer. We had history teachers that received professional development, and they were excited about that course. This is a full credit elective course that surveys African American history. And we are lucky to say that we have all 3 high schools have one section of that course that they are teaching this school year, with 3 of our best history teachers that have been trained and who are going to be working together as we come back in the fall to put curriculum together. I would be happy to answer any questions that I can that you may have regarding this information that I've shared. And I'm also available. I know that the documents for the curriculum are lengthy and probably you need a little time with that. And I'm happy to answer questions over the next few weeks or at any point if you have them.
Board members, okay.
Yes, I just have one. Parents are able to access this through the VDOE website, this document.
Correct. And it's also located on our website under the instruction tab under history.
Okay.
So there's a link
They
to the
want that
crossover document. That's
either
correct.
place that they can go and see
Absolutely.
all of the changes that have been made.
All of the changes, and we've uploaded it as the red line version, so you can see what's been added, taken away, all of that.
So parents, just, and I'm speaking more to the parents, have
Sure.
any concerns, they should go to that document regarding their child's grade level to see if, to review what will be in the courses this coming
Correct.
school year.
Correct. And if they have any questions, they too can feel free to reach out to myself or to our new Director of Secondary Education, Dr. Trosper. We'll be happy.
Mr. Leaming.
Dr. Woodford, you, on one of your slides, you specifically identified or addressed correction to misinformation. Would you care to cite some specifics of the misinformation that has been corrected?
So some of that information would be kind of a soft example is that, the idea that slaves perhaps were happy and satisfied. The language is just very clear that slavery was, not a positive thing in our history and that we should talk about it and be open about that. So it's a little bit about how the language has been worded, that it's very specific to exactly what happened, rather than, I would say, maybe being a little bit weaker in the language of what we're teaching. So it just gives very specific information about what actually happened. And it has added a few details in history that perhaps we haven't been teaching in the past. And I don't have my paper with me, but I'm happy to look for some specifics and send it to you.
Okay, I'd appreciate that.
Sure.
And I read through the African American History course map, and I took a few notes.
Okay.
And I recognize it's not a Bedford County Public Schools generated course map.
Correct.
I'm a history major, history poli-sci. I have no problems with history being taught on any topic. The issue that I have with this course map is how it's taught. It's being taught with a sociological slant with some history, with history embedded into it. In my humble opinion, in its current form, this course map is simply state-sponsored progressive political activism and indoctrination. And it's camouflaged as a history elective. I'm glad to hear that it's on.
Yes.
I'm glad to hear that it's on the website. I encourage parents to look at it and draw their own conclusions. That's my humble opinion. What other curriculum options are available to Bedford County Public Schools?
So, so the standards of learning and the curriculum provided by the DOE are our guidelines and our map. Before we purchase any resources and before we were to purchase a textbook, it would go through the adoption process for teachers to look at, for us to look at, for parents to look at. And we would be very careful about what resources we purchase. Just because it's recommended by the Department of Education doesn't necessarily mean we're just going to automatically purchase them. We will look at different resources and we will be very careful about what we put into our classrooms. And any resources that promote critical race theory would not be something that we would purchase and put in classrooms.
Okay, so we are not by statute or regulation required to follow this particular course map. Is that correct or incorrect?
So the information, like those are the topics that would be covered, and that's the information that would be covered. I think where we get into more of what you're concerned about is the curriculum resources we purchase to teach that information.
Well, I mean, where I'm going with this is I saw, I think it was page 56, a reference to the 1619 project, which exists to reframe history, which I'm not a fan of. Also, reference to Kendi. Things like that disturb me.
Mm-hmm.
And I have serious reservations about how this course map is written and how it's going to be presented to our kids.
If you don't mind, if I could go back and look at that and the resources with it, and I will get in touch with you and we can talk about your concerns.
Thank you, ma'am.
I don't want you to be concerned about anything we're teaching.
Very concerned.
So am I.
Mr. Hill?
Yeah, we all are.
So my question, is this class a requirement for our students to graduate?
No, sir, it's an elective.
So it is not a required course.
No. It's an elective.
I heard something about we were making sure we were going out to our students to encourage them to take this course.
Well, what we were doing is we were letting our students know that this course was still available, even though students hadn't been signing up for it. What we let them know was that there had been updates, that there were updates to the course, and that if they were interested, we did have a course on African American history. And so I think students are starting to get more involved in thinking about history, and so we just had more students sign up, and we encouraged them that. The other thing is we've always talked about we needed at least 15 kids in a class to make that class go, and we kind of committed to, even if it were a small group of kids, we were going to try to support that course and still allow it to move forward. We didn't have to worry about that. We had plenty of students sign up.
So when we were signing up for classes, was our administration encouraging kids to take this class?
No, sir. No, guidance counselors were just, when students were looking at electives, they were talking through these are electives that are offered. This course has been updated if you're interested in it. So it's always the student's choice, especially with electives. The other piece was we also, part of the encouragement is to encourage teachers to get trained. So we were encouraging our teachers, if you're interested in teaching a course like this, training is really important, and we had teachers who were interested. So that also helps us make a course more available to students because we have people trained to do it and do it properly.
So I am interested in number of students that have signed up for this class, pre and now. The other thing that I will make a statement on, I see that the word legends has been crossed out and the word narratives have been replaced. Narratives can change to whatever people want them to change to. So that is a big concern for me. And again, I want to make sure this was not a Bedford County Public School change.
No, all of the
State.
changes, that's a state change. That's the Virginia Department of Education. This red line map is not created by Bedford County Schools. This is the curriculum, this is the SOLs of Virginia.
But it is not a requirement for any of our students to take this class,
The African American History course,
this class that we're talking about.
correct.
And SOL is not a requirement. It's not part of any credit requirement for our students.
That particularly African American History course content, no, sir. If that's,
I
I'm
want to make sure I'm
understanding.
clear. In order for our students to graduate from Bedford County Public Schools, it is not a required credit for them to get a diploma.
correct.
It's an elective. Okay. All right. So, yeah, I'm interested in the numbers. I'm also interested in how the students were encouraged.
Yeah.
Because my next question would be, what other classes are we encouraging our students to take? And the other thing that would be a concern is, you mentioned the number of students and that we were willing to teach that class anyway. I have a concern of that.
We do that often when we're trying to build a CTE course or we're trying to
Okay.
build a chorus program. Sometimes if we have a strong chorus program at a high school, we may have to start small with so we've done that for lots of courses. Sometimes that's
my
how we
question.
build a
I just wanted to
program.
make sure we were doing it for all.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Hairston.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is what for the cultural training that the teachers are going to. Are we using the trainer model?
Actually, the training will come from the Virginia Department of Education, and I'm not sure how they'll roll that out. If it'll be training us to train others, or if they'll put out a module. I don't know if Dr. Calvert has heard yet.
They haven't released it yet.
They haven't released it. They're going to release, I believe, in the spring, so I can let you know once we know how they're going to release that.
Dr. Woodford,
Yes, sir.
I just have to note that in the year 2021, I'm amazed that Douglas Wilder is just finally making his appearance in the Virginia SOLs. I mean, you would think Virginia's first African-American governor, and I believe the first in the nation, would have made his debut in Virginia history courses before now. And the fact that he's still a dean of Virginia politics, years from now, that politicians from both sides court his endorsement every time they run for governor, but regardless. So I guess my question for you is, I know quite well the three teachers that are going to be teaching the African American history elective this year, and personally I believe they're three of the best history teachers that we have. And I can honestly say, when I think of radicals, none of these teachers come to mind. So I feel very confident with these three individuals in a classroom. But my question, I think, aligns well with Mr. Hill's. How much latitude do these teachers have to determine what they will be using and what they will be pulling? I know the standards, yes, but the resources are very much up to the teachers and Bedford County Schools. So we can make sure that the resources and what they're presenting in the class aligns with the interests of the Bedford community while still giving our students the first opportunity to really study specifically African American contributions to American history, correct?
Correct. We are fortunate that we have added back into our organizational chart a supervisor of history. And so we will be able to make sure that there is appropriate training and appropriate resources. Sometimes our resources have to catch up with the curriculum, so we want to make sure we get those resources to teachers and that we are, textbook adoption, if we go that direction, that is a more lengthy process and involves a lot of people, parents, students, the school board. And so we will be looking at all of those materials to be sure that it aligns with, what our community and what the Virginia Department of Education is asking us to do.
Okay, so basically more updates to come.
Yes, sir.
Okay. When might we expect those? Would that be at the August meeting, or would that be sometime in between August, or?
I can get this information to you in probably the next week or so, the questions that you've asked me. I don't know that I'll have information about trainings until later in the fall. Depending on how quickly we get everything in place for resources, it hopefully will be August. I hate to promise, but as soon as I have it.
Understand.
So I need clarification. This class is gonna begin, the updates to this class begins this August or next August?
This August. This is a crossover year,
So
so.
that's next month. And resources and training haven't been released by the state?
Well, there are, go ahead.
Yeah.
Please.
We have two topics going on.
Yeah.
So culturally responsive teaching, what's expected of teachers, certified, has not been in this place.
Okay.
That was the question we're asking. We've gone back and forth between the two topics.
There are resources on the DOE website that have been released in training.
How are teachers, you mentioned that they're evaluated on their culturally responsive teaching. That sounds like a kind of squishy, subjective sort of evaluation process. How does that even work?
So that is not going to be implemented until next year, and that's part of the training that'll be released in the spring. And so there'll be also training for administrators on what does that mean, and specifically, what are those standards and what does that look like? And some of that, if I can go back to, so some of it is just about the classroom, the environment, how the teacher is making everyone feel welcome, how that they are addressing cultural differences. Also that when teachers are looking at data, that they are looking at our subgroups and our gap groups. As when we do SOLs, for instance, reading SOLs, there are subgroups. We have our, our Black subgroup, we have our Hispanic subgroup, we have our students with disabilities. So when teachers and when administrators are looking at data, they are specifically making sure that they are paying attention to those subgroups and then responding in ways that would be culturally relevant to those students. Because when you engage with a student, understanding their history, you can engage them and help them move forward. They'll engage with you in instruction if you have a relationship with them and they feel like you understand where they're coming from, and building those mutual relationships. And again, we'll get more training on that. That's not being implemented this year. That is coming down the road. The SOLs are being implemented. The culturally responsive evaluation system added to teachers will start in the next school year, and that's what we're going to get more training on.
Okay, because it sounds like obviously there are no metrics in place to adequately measure. That's my concern is we're not going to be able to measure or evaluate based on hard data. It's going to be feelings, and that's subjective, and that's unfair.
And I think it'll be just like the standard on climate in your classroom and classroom management. Some of those things are, you can measure with data, and some are just do your kids feel safe. And so the DOE will give us standards and metrics, and they're working through that. And I think they have a very in-depth plan, and they will roll that out to us. So, and we'll bring that to you. I mean, that's part of the teacher evaluation system, so you'll see that before it's rolled out to teachers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Woodford. 18. Here's that funding, Mr. Hagler. Sorry, everybody's sitting in a different place tonight, so I'm having to struggle to find you.
All right, talk about some funding. This past year, there was multiple funding streams that came through. What I'm going to talk about tonight is really the CARES Act funding, and mainly it's called ESSER, and there are 3 buckets under that. I'll refer to them as ESSER 1, 2, and 3. Under ESSER 3, there were specific requirements to really engage the community and get feedback on what our plan was on that. So we've done that, and go.
Did you turn it on the side?
Well, did you turn it off?
I did. I was trying to say, I wanted to see if you.
Thank you. There we go. We engaged different stakeholders. So we engaged the BCEA, the PTA, and also the Superintendent's Advisory. And actually, we had a shell presentation to present to them on an overall plan that the executive administration had put together. But that wasn't a final plan. We had money in there that wasn't allocated. We wanted feedback to really build out what our plan's gonna be. So we went and presented a plan similar to what I'm presenting tonight, a PowerPoint. What I'm presenting tonight covers ESSER 1, 2, and 3. Really with that group, it was just ESSER 3, which was the requirement to engage on that. The plan has to be submitted to DOE by August 1st, and then the actual application by September 1st. That's the ESSER 3 plan. ESSER 1 and 2 applications have already gone in. We'll be amending those as we go along. These are working meetings, and we had great feedback and great participation as we went through this. We really went into the meeting saying, this is our initial plan on spending money, but we really want your ideas back on this to help us build out the rest of the plan. And so some of the things that actually were not in the original, I wanted to put up there as bullet points. I'm not sure which group had recommended this, but I shared different things that came forward with groups that came in subsequent to that. Water dispensers in all schools. Some of the schools, newer schools have those water dispensers with the container. And so Dr. Dewis went out and looked at how much we could estimate a cost to put some of those in all our schools to allow kids to take their containers and fill those. About 120,000. So we plan on building that into the plan. This was a very interesting one with our high schools' music instruments. Cleaning those, deep cleaning those. They get rotated and passed back out. So a lot of your wind instruments, we want to make sure those are deep cleaned after COVID. And so a lot of that we have to outsource that. So we are researching and looking for that device or that equipment that we can do that ourselves. I put an estimated cost of $30,000. We don't have an actual quote on that, but we're going to look at try to build that into plan so we can do it ourselves for all 3 schools. And on top of that, having more equipment to rotate and pass out was something we believe we can put into the plan. So we're going to go forward and put our plan into the state. Hopefully they approve it, and allocate out about $50,000 per high school to add additional instruments. Some of these instruments are 20, 25. They're quite old, so it's really a reinvestment into our music programs, but also additional equipment to rotate and for better hygiene there. And then the final one was, we do have quite a bit of money in our local budget set aside, but there are some hard to fill teaching spots. And this estimated, we're gonna put aside another $100,000 to really encourage teachers to go after certain certifications that we find hard to fill, and really supporting them in their education to get those certifications or additional training. So that's an estimated cost there. It might be more than that, might be less, but we're gonna roll that out and try to cover the cost that is kind of prohibitive for some to go ahead and pursue that. So all told, we took about another $400,000 and added it and built that into the overall plan. The next few slides, I'm gonna show the board really what our plan is by budget year, not by ESSER 1, 2, or 3. It's all blended together. I'll be pulling from each of those and reimbursing those. But real quick, the funding sources before we get into the expenditures, you can see about 1.2 million there for ESSER 1. Most of that has been expended. I have to reimburse that by September 30th of this year, so we've got to turn that one around pretty quickly, and we'll meet that deadline. ESSER 2 was about 5.3, and then the biggest one was ESSER 3 at over 12. Under ESSER 3 were some additional requirements. Another requirement under ESSER 3 was 20% of that must be focused on learning loss. So as we go forward, you'll see some projects, some HVAC projects for air quality. That's fine, but you had to allocate at least 20% towards learning loss under the ESSER 3. So for the 2021 year, which is already over, some digital content, we're going to apply reimbursement for that. We provided daycare for our teachers because daycares were closed. And so for our teachers to come in and teach face-to-face last year, we incurred some daycare costs, so that can be reimbursed. And then custodial support, we outsourced with a custodial company, so our custodians could stay inside doing cleaning or they could do the cleaning. Our custodians were also mowing, so to provide for cleaner buildings, we did quite a bit with that and are continuing to do that through the fall as we get prepared for school to open here. We want to make sure our custodians are focused on cleaning the schools and preparing that for the kids. And there's a lot of mowing to be done right now, so we're trying to get that accomplished. Got my notes on here. The digital content you'll see on each of these screens, let me talk to that a little bit. There was quite a bit of digital content added last year through other funding sources, didn't have to use all of this, but in talking with the instructional department and looking forward to next year, a lot of our teachers took that digital content that we added last year for distance learning that we needed to put together, and they incorporated that into their classrooms. We're going to take this next year to really look at that content and have to make a decision, what are we going to continue to fund long-term? Because the CARES Act and ESSER money does not go in, forever. So there's quite a bit of money being put into that digital content, and we're going to have to decide how much of that is going to make it into future local budgets to support, and some of it won't make it in. But we really want to take this year from the instructional side and our content specialists to really look at what's working at what level. Because some of them were bought for the whole division, and it really is great for the secondary, but the elementary didn't use it, and vice versa. So we can pull back on our licenses, save some money, and really focus it to where those teachers. And we heard that feedback back from these groups that we engaged. And you had both. Elementary was saying, yeah, we really used it. Secondary was saying, nah, we didn't use it that much, it's not that important. So we want to make sure that we don't pull anything back where people developed all their curriculum and then pull back right now as we get ready to go into the next year. So this will be an evaluation year. And you'll see digital content in each of the years as we go forward. You can see the musical instruments there, the water dispensers. I just spoke about the digital content. And some of that digital content is also paying for the Virtual Virginia students that will be attending and paying that bill that comes in for that. I'll move on to the staffing and go down through that. The grant coordinator, there's a lot of money to manage. And so within this money, it's perfectly acceptable to have somebody kind of coordinate that and manage that to make sure hitting the timelines and also the requirements. So a grant coordinator to help with that. That grant coordinator will also be picking up Title IV, Title III, and 21st century. But primarily right now, making sure we're hitting the deadlines and writing the grants and amendments for the ESSER 1, 2, and 3. In our regular budget, we added quite a bit for an intervention design specialist. I think nearly 11 positions were added in our regular budget. Instructional department looked at this and said an additional 2 with ESSER money would help round out and get us through this year. So the plan would call for 2 additional ones. SPED supervisor compliance. A lot of discussion with the groups on this one. With our kids coming back, there's been learning loss and some gaps. And so making sure we're staying in compliance and identifying that, or not over-identifying people that might be going into meetings and requiring special ed requirements, or is it just learning loss? So making sure that we're taking care of everything, because there could be a lot of that coming forward. So we're going to put some money to make sure that we're on top of that, and we're making sure we're properly evaluating kids and meeting their needs. Learning coaches for Liberty Middle School for next year. Learning coaches for Virtual Virginia. That's kind of a requirement with Virtual Virginia that you have connectivity to those kids. So we would use the ESSER money to pay for those coaching positions, at least for in the FY 21-22 plan year. The last one is maintain staff. In our budget, we talked about using the CARES Act money because we heard feedback from our stakeholders that do not reduce staff. Our enrollment's going down, normally we would cut staff. So what we decided is leave our staffing the same, even though our enrollment's going down, and we'd use CARES Act money to bridge that gap. Ultimately, we do have to come back on staffing or go up on our revenues or find other means to support that. But the goal is for this next year to set aside $1 million. Once again, this is a plan or a budget. The instructional department with, and Dr. Calvert are working with each school to see where we might have difficulties in either elementary or high schools. And they are allotting out staff where they see special needs. And so that's about 20 positions. If we need to go higher, we will. There's quite a bit of money there, and we want to make sure we deal with the learning loss. So $1 million for the 21-22 is what we're estimating. We'll see what that actually comes out to. So that's the 21-22 year. When we go to 22-23, a lot of the same type of things you see there, digital content, additional certification support. That was the 100,000 I mentioned earlier that made it into the plan based upon feedback. And then also, again, staffing. If you look at the bottom one there, maintain staff, teachers, it goes down to $500,000. It was my guidance that was saying, okay, when this money's gone, to eliminate 20 to 23 positions in 1 year would be pretty hard. So let's kind of land the plane softly rather than nosedive it. So it's kind of going back from $1 million to $500,000, and then we'd go down to zero, at least with federally funded CARES Act money. What we do in our local budget could be different, but at least with CARES Act money, let's not try to cut 20 to 23 positions in 1 year. Maybe go from 20, then go down to 10, and then down to zero with federally funded money. And so that's just kind of phasing it out over the next 2 years. 23-24, pulling back on some of that staffing, once again, landing that plane a little bit softer and not having as much. And so that would be the 23-24 year. And you can see in the 23-24 year, the only digital content I built in is for Virtual Virginia. That's an estimate. We don't know how many kids are going to be in it that year. But all that other digital content goes away in that year. That'll be the year in our regular budget. We're going to have to decide what makes it in and what doesn't make it into our regular funded budget without the ESSER or CARES Act money. So we've got a couple years to evaluate that, but there's some hard decisions because there's quite a bit of money in digital content right now. And finally, I didn't put the projects on each year because not entirely sure when all those are going to come along. But maintenance projects, and what we're seeing there under HVAC projects, spending about 10 million on there, estimated. You can see the schools we have slotted for that. Some of the schools that you know we're doing HVAC on right now are not on there because we're using different money for that, not these funds. We're already moving forward with those. Carpet replacement at quite a few of our schools. Duct cleaning, all schools, some mold removal, air quality, San River High School, Liberty High School. And then you see a small reserve. We've got to bid a lot of these projects out. And I'll tell you, Dr. Dewis has received, along with our maintenance department, that these AC companies are already seeing an escalation in prices of 25, 50%. Supply chains are stretched, not enough people to do it. All schools have received the money we have, and a lot of people are going after HVAC projects. So we're under a tight timeline to get a lot of this done based upon how many schools we have to do. So these will have to be bid out, and we'll see what the prices come in. If they come in way more than what we estimated, we'll have to pull back on how many we can do. If they come in lower, we can free up money to do other things. So these grants, as we go along, will have to be amended multiple times based upon actual expenditures and how they come in. A breakdown on overall money. Not sure why that broke out like that. It was all kind of aligned, so I apologize on that. Digital content, about 2.6 million there at 13%. Positions, about 17%. Daycare was under 1%. Custodial under 1%. And you can go down there. Projects came out about 64%, over 12 million. So that's how the summary breaks down. Over $18 million in the 3 grants being spent over between now and September of 2024 is when it must be spent by. So that's our overall plan. Presenting it to the board. If there's ideas the board has, we can go back and kind of make some tweaks and stuff. But we do have to submit our plan and a template to the state by August 1st, which we plan to do. And then we'll actually write the grant application during the month of September, during the month of August, and get that into DOE by September 1st. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions, or any of the other executive members of the team that put this together might be able to help and add more clarity.
Mr. Leamy?
Mr. Hagler, I may have missed it, but I'm very leery about using grant money. Well, let me back up. Are these renewable grants?
They're not.
Okay, so I'm very leery about using grant money to pay salaries. Because when that grant money's gone, where's that coming from? Or is that a question for us to figure out down the road?
That'll be future budgets, because I think we made it pretty clear to all of our staff, because we're transitioning back in, we were face-to-face most of the time last year, but now we've rejumbled everything, moved people around. So for this year, as we transition back, let's maintain our staffing to help us get through this next year. We plan on pulling back on that next year, and then the following year eliminating that. And so I agree, you don't want people to get used to, okay, there's only 8 people, only 8 kids in the class. We can't support that long term. What these positions are doing is, as we transition into this year, we're specifically placing teachers in schools where we see there might be, there's some elementary schools that have split classes in certain years. We don't want to have that this year, I don't believe. And so we might say, that might be normally a split class, first and second. Let's give them another teacher, so that's not this year, so we can catch up with any learning loss. That's what it's being used for. It's not long-term saying we're going to support these staffing levels. It's only for a 2-year period that we plan on doing that and pulling that back. And then we have to address overall staffing, would have to come through the normal budget process and how we build that out. So I agree with you. You really don't want to build something long-term, but it's totally acceptable within the grant and acceptable, and it's actually encouraged to deal with learning loss. And this is one of the uses to do that for.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
It's training wheels basically for this year. Ms.
Thank you,
Harrison?
Mr.
Yep.
Chairman. Mr. Hagler, I appreciate you making reference to learning loss. And that I know, along with all of us, is a great concern that we have. And also something that you mentioned regarding, and I had asked about this last board meeting, combination classes. So I want to be clear, this upcoming school year, beginning in August, will we have combination classes at the elementary level?
I'm going to defer to Dr. Whitford or Dr. Calvert, they've worked with all of our principals and on all this and allocated out staff, so I'll defer to them.
So, we just had our rollover in Power School, and so what we're trying to look at is actual numbers in the schools. Now, principals, and you guys know this because you've done this, you estimate, you think about, you think you know you have certain students, especially kindergarten students. And so we have asked our principals to make sure that we're using actual numbers. And so some of our principals had talked to Dr. Calvert and me about we might have to go a combination class if we have this number of kindergartners come. And we said, well, at the rollover, when we see actual numbers of kids in, we're going to start evaluating that. Mr. Hagler and Dr. Calvert and Dr. Connor started working on that today to look at our actual numbers. And so once we see our numbers, and as always, we have some schools that we see maybe overstaffed and some that are understaffed. So we'll start making those adjustments. We'll start hiring teachers. We won't have combination classes. I'm going to promise you that. Principals may be looking and saying, oh, I might have to have a class like that. We've assured them we will make sure that that's not going to happen, but we didn't want to add more staff if we didn't need to. So we want to see actual numbers. It's very hard to predict our kindergartners this year because we had so many that didn't come last year. They decided to wait a year. So again, we just want to be sure that we are not burdening our budget when we may have the staff already. We just need to move them around a little bit. But I promise you, at the end of the day, Dr. Calvert and I, we are going to make sure we have staff in place so we don't have combination classes.
All right, thank you, Dr. Walker.
You're welcome.
It's near and dear to me.
And that's recorded, so it is going to be.
Yes, absolutely. I made a mental note too.
Okay, Mr. Hill and then Dr. Mealy.
Certification. I think it's around 100K we were advocating for that. Are we asking for terms if we're paying for certifications, and if we are, what are those terms?
Yes, sir. Calvert, you wanna, because we discussed that when we were building this out, and I believe we've already developed a document, so there are gonna be terms.
We have an educational expense agreement. So we are asking for dates and, college information, cost up front, that they would stay in the area for 3 years after completing the certification. We're giving them 3 years to complete the certification, depending, of course, on what it is. The ones most recently I've been looking at is library, so those are significant number of classes, so that would be given a 3-year window, and then we would expect 3 years for them to stay in Bedford County. If not, it would have to be reimbursed.
Learning coaches for Virtual Virginia, is that something mandated?
No, sir. It is something, well, let me go back. Virtual Virginia asks that we have mentors on staff at the schools to support students. And so with our additional staff, we thought it would be helpful. Those learning coaches are working in our Bedford Connects remote learning at the Alternative Education Center. So those learning coaches are not only supporting our Virtual Virginia students, but also supporting our Alternative Education Center as we try to make some changes to that program. And so it's only a few, but what they will do is make sure they're helping parents with the communication to teachers at Virtual Virginia, helping students stay on track, making sure that their grades are staying up. We have right now 1 at elementary, 1 at middle, and we have 2 high school support staff there. So it is required that we have a mentor at every school, and this way it's not as much staff, and they're specifically focused on those virtual students, so we can be sure that they are staying in touch and connected at all times.
So, but we have not provided those learning coaches. We've had staff support Virtual Virginia in the past, but not a learning coach.
Correct. It's normally been at the school level. We've not typically had as many students in Virtual Virginia, but.
So it's not something that we are committing to do long-term?
Oh, no, sir.
It's just a temporary, okay.
Right.
Water fountains, 120K, 149K, I saw 2 different figures. Are we actually able to use the water fountains?
Yes.
We're gonna make sure all our water fountains are working. Again, we have had them as a health and safety measure, off limits for the year. These are touchless dispensers we're talking about here. We think will be more sanitary and encourage hydration and health and wellness through, in all of our schools. Schools have gotten grants for these or paid for them with money they've cobbled together from one group or another, PTAs, things like that. In a few instances, this would allow all our schools to have them in common areas to be used.
Love the idea, but I'm gonna go back to my question. Are we able to use it?
Yes,
Okay, so the water fountains are
we'll have
available.
the ones we have on, and as we're able to replace some of them with these new models, they'll be on also. Yes.
I noticed mold, I think it was at the 2 high schools, is that right? So what's causing it, and are we fixing it versus just cleaning it?
No, we're fixing it. We have in a handful of classrooms at both of those high schools, in the science buildings, moisture that has gotten in behind some cabinetry. And so we are simultaneously addressing the exterior issues where the roof and window issues that causing that, and remediating inside. So we're taking the cabinets out. In some instances, we're cleaning behind them and putting them back. In some instances, we're replacing some of that. But it needs to happen, and it was isolated to those rooms on the exterior of that science building on one side of both schools.
All right, and then Randy, the last one's for you. I just want to make sure, reversion money.
Yes.
So we've got a deadline approaching.
Yep.
And I just want to make sure all of this money that we've allocated, which I know is temporary money.
Yep.
I want to make sure we've got that in sight, and we're.
Correct. Yeah, the reversion, some years out, but 29, I believe, but it's coming quickly. The current plan is that each and every year, the initial, the first $500,000 of new revenue that we would receive would be put aside into the CIP plan to spend on projects, not necessarily HVAC, but roofing projects and other things, that we can spend that, and each year another 500,000 go in there. And then by 29, hopefully 4.5 to 5 million set aside for that, and then we'll look at what the amount of money that reversion money would go away at that time and work with the county at that time. So we're building up to that.
So the answer is yes. I wanted to make sure it's on our radar.
There is a plan, and we're moving forward, and hopefully there's always new revenue to fund that. And if there's not any given year, we'll have to work with board supervisors and see what we need to do on that. But there's a current plan to get pretty close to that, so.
Dr. Mealy.
And I'm just gonna play off Mr. Hill for just a moment with the reversion money. Is it possible when we get our quarterly reports with revenues and that, and especially in budgets, yearly budgets, that I don't know, maybe is put in parentheses underneath to reversion money ends 2029? Because I just never keep that in my head, and that's a little scary. We should know if that revenue number contains $6 million that's not gonna be there in X amount of years.
Okay, within the budget, or even maybe my first quarter update next year, I can add a document that just says, here's reversion, here's the plan, and here's where we would be in 29, and any gap that would still exist at that time based upon the current plan, and just give that to the board.
That would help me. Just that 2029 just keeps slipping out of my brain. I also want to add to Ms. Harrison's combo classes, Dr. Woodford. I'm just so pleased to hear that. But I really think also it needs to be a priority even moving past this year. As an elementary principal, I think all three of us understand that is never a good option. I don't care how hard you work to do it. It's just not a good option. So if we could do that and have that, I think as a board, we need to think about that as well. It's just never a good option, especially when you're building foundational skills for students to have a combination class. And Dr. Bergen, I'm gonna pose this to you. You can redirect it if you need to. I'm really thrilled to hear about the examination of the digital content that we've been using, and the review by specialists. So is there a plan at this point so that when that money, that the largest portion of the money runs out, this is completed, or are we just at the beginning stages of that?
We are just at the beginning stages. The first goal is to get all of our supervisors hired. And then we'll start looking at content and getting feedback from our teachers. The other thing, if you'll recall, part of what we had in the budget was science textbook adoption and English textbook adoption. And there are so many digital resources with that. So we hope to also, as we're going through those two adoptions this year, to be able to say, what do we not need to add? We're gonna get that with our textbook adoption. And then what is really being used and where? So that's gonna be a process we're gonna probably be working through, looking at usage reports all year, so we can make really good decisions about that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Around the digital content, I thought we had a discussion that would eventually be the same as textbook funding. So are these dollars that, again, this is grant money,
Correct,
but eventually the digital's not going away.
correct.
So it will be used in the textbook funding as well.
Correct. We did, because we were just so unsure about if we were going to have to go out of school, and so we really gave teachers as many digital resources as we could. And so, yes, we already had some digital resources in place that were being pulled out of the textbook fund. And so part of what Mr. Hagler and I have talked about is these additional resources that we've purchased, what makes the most sense, because it will eventually have to come out of the textbook fund. And so we want to be sure we have a plan to be able to keep that going. So yes, that is what we're monitoring.
In addition, talking about the textbook fund, after the recession in 2009, textbook adoptions just didn't happen in all districts. Everybody fell behind because that's where a lot of the budgets were being gutted. As we get back into this digital content, we'll have carryover funds from last year that will help us get through the reading and science adoption next year. Of that, I'll come back to the board after the audit and we'll reappropriate that towards there. Also, this is helping towards our digital content, but ultimately, that's part of our budget too. So I'll be working with the instructional department to come up with a 5, 6, 7-year plan on how do we start refunding, putting more money into that textbook fund so we can support the digital content and also adoptions. Because adoptions happen usually every 7 years and it's a big ticket item, $1 million plus. So we have to put enough money aside to fund that and also the digital content that we're paying license fees on each year. So we need to have a long-term plan for this and we need to build up to it. This money and also carryover money will help springboard us to get caught up on some things, but we're gonna have to deal with that long-term with our local state funding. And the state gives us money for textbook, but we gotta make sure we allocate that and spend it on the things that are working best in the schools. So there is some money that we're gonna have to start putting into the textbook fund on top of what the state is putting in to do this and also adoptions. And so I plan to work with the staff this year and bring something to the board as far as this is a long-term plan to get it to that level.
Dr. Hoover, I just want to be clear, so these content area supervisors are going to vet these resources based on any changes that have occurred to the SOL, such as history, not just because I like it, but it actually fits the content. Okay, thank you.
Dr. Hicks, any questions? You're still with us? Dr. Hicks? Yep, you're good? Great. So one question, mainly just a point of clarification. So the mold removal is, if not our highest priority, at the very top of our priority list to correct.
It's happening right now.
It's happening, oh,
Yeah.
perfect, okay,
It's,
great.
it's gonna be done regardless.
Okay.
It will, we hope it's supported in this grant application to pay for it, but, you know,
But it's happening regardless.
it's happening
Okay.
now.
That's
Yeah.
one that would have happened even if we didn't have these funds. So
That's what I was hoping you were gonna say,
Yes,
okay.
so
great.
that's already in progress and being taken care of.
Excellent, okay, great.
So we'll submit this plan to the state August first and go forward, and if we have any major amendments, we'll bring that back to the board based upon actual expenditures as they happen throughout the next 3 years.
Sounds good. Well, making his debut at the big table tonight, Dr. Josh Cornett with criteria for recognizing students and staff accomplishments. Welcome aboard.
Good evening, board members of the board. Tonight I am sharing information requested at the last school board meeting regarding the development of criteria for recognizing student and staff accomplishments at school board meetings. I worked with the communications team and the executive staff to develop this criteria. So, let's turn it on.
Yeah, turn it on. I turned it off.
You're not pranking the new guy, are you?
Alright, so to qualify for school board recognition, honorees must meet one of the following criteria. Achievement of first or second place in national competitions or events, achievement of national recognition for outstanding achievements such as the National Merit Finalist, achievement of first place in regional and the defined regional multi-state competitions or events, achievement of first or second place in state team competitions or events, achievement of first place in individual state school-sponsored competitions, and last but not least, achievement in being selected as the state player of the year or equivalent in VHSL activities in sports. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, so this means we're gonna start seeing a parade of students in this room regularly, right?
Yes, sir.
And staff.
We will have some next school.
Next school board meeting, great, sounds good. Is that all? Oh, that was fast. Well, last time we went over the dinner break, Mr. Hill has never let me forget that, so let's go ahead and break for dinner now, and we will come back to lacrosse funding after the break. I think that might take more than 5 minutes. Alright, so we will be back at 7 o'clock. Got him. So is Dr. Hicks is on? Okay, great. All right, so we will begin tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we'll wait for Ms. Harrison to get it. It's okay. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So we will now begin the public comment portion of tonight's meeting. This meeting is limited to 25 minutes. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes, while anyone representing an organized group will be allowed 5 minutes, provided they are the sole speaker from that group or organization. Speakers are asked to state their name, address, voting district, and organization or group if applicable. The school board is here to listen to your comments but will not engage or respond to speakers during this 25-minute period. Please remember that this is a public meeting and that we expect all speakers to refrain from any foul, abusive, or hateful language. So Dr. Calvert will be serving as our timekeeper for speakers with a ringing bell indicating that a person has 30 seconds remaining, and a second bell will ring indicating the person's 3 minutes have expired. Dr. Calvert will also serve as timekeeper for our cumulative 25-minute period. When the 3-minute timer bell rings, please discontinue speaking and allow the next person in line to come to the podium. Should you be unable to finish your comments, please send them or give them to our clerk, Mrs. Johnson, and she will give them to board members.
Mr. Chairman, tonight we have 9 speakers, starting with Congressman Bob Good, Lacey Johnson, Mandy Baber, Eden Baber, Heather Ferriola, David Beauregard, Ryan Minnie, Joshua Birch, and Kenyon Cap. Now.
Great, thank you, ma'am. So from the great 5th District of Virginia, Congressman Good.
Thank you so much, and I want to thank our school board and our school administration and everyone involved here tonight for all of your hard work, for your difficult and demanding job, and for allowing folks to share a little bit tonight. I want to thank all of our parents and community members and family members who are here tonight. You are right to be concerned. We are losing across the country in our school systems in terms of what our children are being taught and the indoctrination that's happening, and I am fighting that aggressively in Washington, D.C. as a person who sits on the Education and Labor Committee, and I have time I sympathize with our team members here tonight because during my 4 years in Campbell County, I was on the Joint Schools Committee where for 4 years I was attending the meetings, the combined meetings we had with the school board. When you look at what this administration on the federal level, what they are trying to do to look at everything, quite frankly, through a racist lens and trying to divide us and pit us against one another. Dr. Ben Carson, someone just told me they talked with him and he said, they asked him what was the greatest, one of my colleagues said, they asked Dr. Ben Carson, what's the greatest threat to the country? And he said, division. And he said, to quote President Lincoln, he said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. A nation divided against itself cannot stand. And you look at this governor, and I sympathize with our school administration, our school board, because much of what was shared tonight is handed down from the state from a requirement standpoint. The demands of Richmond on what we teach our children in Bedford County or my home county in Campbell County. But this governor, to atone for his own seemingly questionable background, shall we say, said, hey, I'll dedicate the rest of my term to bringing equity and fighting this battle from how he perceives it anyway for the remainder of his term. It's concerning when it comes from the state here with some of the remarks that Dr. Woodward shared on what's going to be taught or the perspective. We hear a lot of words and we don't know what they mean. It seems as if the narrative now on the national level is, first of all, defend CRT, critical race theory, which says that we are defined by our race. We are inherently racist if we're the wrong color. We're inherently victims if we're the wrong color. And that we should look at everything through a racist narrative, a racist lens. And that our nation is irreparably, systemically racist, which is just not true. It's absolutely not true. I'm thankful at age 55, we live in a different place than we did when I was 5 or 10 or 15. Having grown up in this area. But it is very concerning when it seems like the narrative is, first of all, defend CRT on the federal level, claim how great it is, But then secondly, say it doesn't exist and these conservatives, these Republicans just made it up. Thirdly, teach it under a different name, just change the name for it. And then fourthly, claim that if you're against CRT, critical race theory, not what we heard tonight, that means you don't want history taught, that you want to deny the history or pretend it didn't exist. Again, at age 55, I grew up learning about slavery. I grew up learning about discrimination. I grew up learning about the achievements of those of African American descent, like right here Booker T. Washington or Frederick Douglass or so many others. That was not kept out of the curriculum that I learned as a kid. And to suggest that it is today, I think, is dishonest, and again, it's divisive for us. This should be just a first step tonight, letting our schools and our administration know that parents and community and family members are going to be engaged in what's taught in our schools, what's taught in our classrooms, and we're going to hold folks accountable for that. Think about it, Bedford County. If we have an issue in Bedford County, think about the state and about the nation, because Bedford's a conservative county. But often the school boards don't reflect the greater community. That's happened across the country. So it's great that you're going to be engaged. It's great that you're going to hold folks accountable. And again, this just needs to be a first step. I appreciate the remarks, particularly of Mr. Leahy, and being concerned, and I've raised this in Washington, about the 1619 project, which is dishonest history, and about the writings of Mr. Kendi. And if you don't know who that is, I encourage you to look up Ibrahim Kendi and what he has written and what he has said, which is a basis for critical race theory. And a bad course, if it is a bad course, that's taught as an elective, is still a bad course. And I would just challenge our friends here in Bedford County to stand in the gap and to push back against the state when the state is wrong. We've seen that with our Board of Supervisors. We've seen that with our sheriffs across the state. When they're doing things wrong, the Board of Supervisors, the Sheriff's Department have pushed back and tried to stand in the gap for the citizens of their county. And I certainly hope that our school board will do that when it's warranted. So I recognize what you do is very difficult. I recognize the pressures that are put on us from the state. But we need to stand for what's right, and we need to stand up for what's best for our kids, and we need to push back. So I just want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I really appreciate you giving me a little bit of time to say a few things, and so thank you very much. And as we say up there, I yield back to the chairman and whoever might be next. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman. Lacey Johnson. And then after Lacey, we have Mandy Baber, if you would like to also kind of be standing up, ready to go.
Good evening. My name is Lacey Johnson. I'm a Bedford County resident with 3 children, 2 of whom attend public school in Bedford County. I will be speaking to you this evening about required mask usage, specifically for school-aged children, and asking that this requirement be lifted within our county. I have found nothing documented from the county that would prevent parents who desire to mask their children from being able to do so, but I'm here on behalf of parents in this county respectfully requesting that this requirement be lifted and masking our children be a choice. A recent study conducted by the University of Florida Mass Spectrometry Research and Education Center evaluated 6 masks worn by school-aged children for 5 to 8 hours per day. These masks were considered new or freshly laundered. 5 of the 6 masks tested positive for fungi, bacteria, and parasites. 3 of those tested positive for dangerous pathogenic and pneumonia-causing bacteria. 11 pathogens were detected during testing, including pneumonia, tuberculosis, meningitis, sepsis, diphtheria, and E. coli. A recent study was published in May at the University of Louisville, and it concluded our findings do not support the hypothesis that SARS-CoV-2 transmission rates decrease with greater public mask use. Furthermore, the study concludes prolonged mask usage greater than 4 hours a day promotes facial alkalinization and inadvertently encourages dehydration, which in turn can enhance barrier breakdown and bacterial infection risk. British clinicians have reported masks to increase headaches, sweating, and decrease cognitive precision. They also state by obscuring nonverbal communication, masks interfere with social learning in children. Likewise, masks can distort verbal speech and remove visual cues to the detriment of individuals with hearing loss. A study just released on June 30th by the Journal of the American Medical Association entitled Experimental Assessment of Carbon Dioxide Content in Inhaled Air with or Without Face Masks in Healthy Children showed that children in masks, particularly young children, had over 6 times the proper amount of carbon dioxide inhalation. Symptoms of high carbon dioxide include headaches, dizziness, difficulty breathing, increased heart rate, and poor concentration. We are expecting our children to go to school and learn. However, their masks affect many aspects of their health, but namely their cognitive precision and/or concentration. These 3 studies clearly show masking our children is detrimental to their health and well-being. Maybe you're wondering about the health and well-being of those who come in contact with our children on a daily basis at school. The official journal of the American Academy of Pediatrics published a commentary in relation to COVID-19 and the ending states. About 6 months into the pandemic, accumulating evidence and collective experience argue that children, particularly school-aged children, are far less important drivers of SARS-CoV-2 transmission than adults. The CDC official website states that less than 10% of COVID-19 cases in the United States have been among children and adolescents aged 5 to 17 years. I implore you on behalf of the parents of Bedford County to make masking our children a choice and not a requirement. Thank you.
Johnson, Mandy Baber. And then following Mandy, we have Eden Baber.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you all tonight. My name is Mandy Baber, District 6. I live on Founding Way Road in Bedford, and Ms. Harrison, Dr. Harrison used to be our children's principal, so it's nice to see you again. I have 3 children in Bedford County Public Schools, and it's with great sadness and frustration that I come before you begging and pleading on behalf of the innocence of our children. Recently, the Department of Education has handed down a 27-page document for school boards to consider regarding the model for treatment of transgender students. This entire document is of great concern to me and many of the other parents here that won't be allowed to speak tonight due to time. I read each of the 27 pages and find that they are requesting tolerance of a very small margin of people with a blatant disregard for the safety of a large group of people. The Department of Education is overreaching and outstretching itself and meddling in the private affairs of all public school children. I'm not here to debate any particular group or community that chooses to do what it wants to do privately. I am here, however, to point out that the safety of all of our children is being compromised by what the Department of Education is asking the school board to consider. If those that are born biologically male are permitted into locker rooms or bathrooms of a student that is born biologically female, this will cause a problem. At this time, we have laws and policies already on the books that thoroughly address bullying and harassment in schools, including federal laws such as Title IX that provides gender-based harassment of all students, prohibits gender-based harassment of all students, regardless of actual or perceived sexual orientation or gender identity of the harasser or targeter. Public schools and their school boards should make reasonable accommodations for all students in restrooms and locker rooms as needed, which can be handled on a case-by-case basis without overreaching policies. Adopting the Virginia Department of Education policy is putting all of Virginia public school students at risk. I'm asking you to just say no. No to putting my daughter at risk, my 2 sons at risk. No on behalf of parents who didn't or could not come here to speak tonight. No to endangering my children while they're entrusted in your care. Our neighbors in Roanoke have already made a decision to just say no. I quote one of the school board members, "We have discussed it and have no plans to adopt new policies. Just as in the past, if a potential transgender student comes to us, the principal, guidance counselors, student, and parent will sit down and have a discussion. We have offered a separate individual bathroom for use in the past, and it has not been a problem." Not just my personal opinion here, but it's another example of overreaching the state and not letting schools make their own policies, end quote. I ask that each of you spend time in prayer over this, as I certainly will be praying for wisdom for each of you. Let's stand together to protect our children from the overreaching arm of the government power. And remember what Galatians 5:9 says, "A little leaven leavens the lump." We cannot allow a little leaven or false teaching to enter, just as yeast, it permeates all that it touches.
Eden Baber, and following Eden, we have Heather, and I apologize, I'm not going to try to mess up your last name.
Good evening, my name is Eden Baber, and I am a 7th grader at Forest Middle School. I know for a fact that me and my friends at Forest Middle will not be comfortable or feel safe using the same bathroom as a male that identifies as a female. If you allow these model policies to be passed, then you are pleasing a small amount of the population. But what about the other majority of our school's populations? Letting these model policies be passed will be making more people uncomfortable and unsafe than it will be pleasing people. Psalms 139 verse 14 says this: I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Marvelous all your works. This verse continues, but I just wanted to point out those key parts. Changing your gender is considered to be a sin, and you are saying that God has made a mistake in your gender. By allowing this rule to be passed, you are abiding the sin. I hope that you will think about what I have just said, and thank you for your time. Good night.
Thank you, Eden. And then we have, after Heather, we have David Beauregard.
Good evening. Thank you so much for allowing us to all come and speak. My name is Heather Ferriola. I live here in town. I have 2 sons here in Bedford County Public Schools, as well as 2 stepchildren. I've come today to speak to you about the new changes being made to the Virginia transgender student policy. I have many concerns about this policy and the welfare and safety of all students. When the policy was written, it seems to only have considered those whom identify with a gender other than their biological one. Consequently, in our community, those who identify as the opposite gender are in the who do not identify as the opposite biological gender are in the majority. That is not to say that those in the minority don't deserve safety, respect, and dignity, but we must reach for a solution that everyone can feel comfortable with. One major concern I have is for safety. It should not be hard to imagine the safety concerns for young women being in a bathroom with young men. As a whole, men are larger and stronger than girls. It is a biological fact. As a society, we've been unable to stop predators from taking pictures of young girls in bathrooms, as well as sexually assaulting them in public places. Having this policy and being unable to challenge a student's motives leaves young women vulnerable. The school board, as well as the state of Virginia, must be aware of the potential legal trouble they will face if a student's privacy is invaded or if there are any counts of sexual misconduct. Boys should also be protected for potential allegations of sexual misconduct that could come from this. We cannot let one demographic of people hold more value than another. One obvious solution to this problem would be to have single private use bathrooms around each school. Children that feel uncomfortable using the bathrooms or getting dressed around peers can use this. It will be open to everyone who wants to use it. Transgender students would have the privacy and dignity by being able to use the bathroom without having to choose which side to go in. All other students could continue to use the bathrooms assigned to their biological gender. This would eliminate the risk of trolls going into the bathroom that is not assigned to their biological gender. Like I mentioned before, I do think these new transgender policies will result in lawsuits. Our neighboring counties have already taken a stance on this issue to have private bathrooms available to those students who might identify with the opposite biological gender. Virginia has gone to an extreme to make the transgender community feel included. It is imperative that Bedford County goes to that same extreme to make all of their students feel comfortable and included. We must take a stand. We have to stop this policy and do what's best for all of our children.
Thank you, David Beauregard, and then Ryan Minnie.
Ladies and gentlemen of the board, fellow citizens, thank you for this time. I just have a statement. For decades now, government has relied upon and used to its great advantage the lack of interest and participation of its citizens, the source of any and all governmental authority, to seduce and to override the will of the people. They, the government servants, have enacted rules, laws, ordinances, edicts, etc. under a false authority, because the citizens have not made them accountable on a regular basis. Election times and results are not the only time that people may call their servants into account, particularly in the state of Virginia and Bedford Town and County. As it is established and written, Article 1, Bill of Rights, Section 2, people are the source of power, that all power is vested in and consequently derived from the people, that magistrates are their trustees and servants at all times, amenable to them. It is all too obvious that our society is imploding and on the verge of catastrophic consequences that may well not be revived, unless the people actually stand against and reject the policies and forces that clearly are intent on destroying this nation and silencing the people through various isms. Isms such as communism, Marxist, neo-Marxist ideology, critical race theory, transgender edicts, and socialism, just to name a few. It is not in the school board's purview to hide detrimental indoctrination plans which violate the First Amendment of free speech and to seek to force curriculum, practices, and dogma on a free people. Practices that have clearly demonstrated for millennia to tear down, disarm, and subject otherwise healthy, vibrant, long-established ways for communities to live, for the most part in harmonious cooperation. Boards who seek to edge out and silence the voice of parents and the natural parental right in the upbringing of their own children have violated their oath, both constitutions and ultimately the right to serve the people. The state of Virginia has mandated, and the school board seeks to inculcate the CRT and the transgender indoctrinations. So we, the people of this county, town, state, and nation, unequivocally reject these anti-American, anti-community proposals. The supposed rights for some at the expense and detriment of the rights of the masses contradicts the equity and equality that this board, this state, and these ideologies seek to espouse, and obfuscates long-established healthy and thriving community values for millennia. Citizens honor one another through responsibility, accountability for behavior, which in turn benefits the whole of society, and reproof and correction for contrary behavior that is harmful to that society. These things are plainly visible and well known. As our servants, closed meeting is a violation of the second article, not being amenable or accountable at all times. Complete rejection is what we want of the Virginia Department of Education mandates for transgender model policies, and complete rejection of the culturally responsive teaching / critical race theory. Thank you.
I'm Ryan, I'm gonna yield back my time.
No, okay.
Yeah.
So Ryan will not be speaking. Joshua Birch, and then following Joshua, we have Kenyon Knapp.
Good day. Thank you for, I live on Parraville Road here in Bedford. So we celebrated our Independence Day, but why did we separate from the English in the first place? Our founding fathers believed that there were three forms of law: moral, natural law, civil law, and judicial law. Civil law and judicial law are set up by men: speed limits, fees, or jail time. Moral law was given to us by God: telling the truth, don't murder, self-defense, property, marriage. These are summed up in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. They explain in the Declaration of Independence, whether a government creates law or not, it is not, if it is not in alignment with the moral law, then that law is illegal, and it is the responsibility of the people to stand against it. This is the reason that for the birth of America, all men are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. It was not taxation without representation. Actually, that was one of the last parts of the Declaration of Independence. One of the first parts was to create wholesome and moral laws that are in alignment with the Lord. So God's laws have to do with people's value and people's identity. Directions from our current government are in opposition to the moral law, and it's our responsibility to stand against it. There are two sexes, male and female. Marriage is between a man and a woman. People are created in the image of God and created to reflect His nature. People are not separated into oppressors and oppressed. We are all equally in need of a Savior. And Jesus died and forgave us all and to make us all right with God. Anything taught ignoring this truth or in opposition to these truths is harmful. The schools should not be taught in our schools, regardless of what any judicial or civil law may say. Everybody who agrees with me, please stand up.
you. Kenyon Knapp.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the board tonight. I'm a resident of Forest, Virginia, and obviously here in Bedford County, and a parent to 6 kids. And I need to address the Virginia transgender student policy. I should also mention that I'm a mental health professional. I've been a licensed professional counselor and professor for over 20 years. I'm speaking as a private citizen, not representing any of the 7 universities I've worked for over the years. There's a transsexual agenda in America today that suggests that a person can transition from being a man to a woman or a woman to a man. As a counselor, I'm quite familiar with this group of people and their efforts to be the opposite sex. They undergo plastic surgery called sexual reassignment surgery, cross-dress, and then seek to persuade the world that you can change one's sex and that it's truly possible. The American Psychological Association refers to this condition in the DSM as gender dysphoria, which is a disorder. I urge you not to have any kind of transsexualism education program here in Bedford County, as the vast majority of these programs promote a controversial and divisive social and political agenda, which is not in the best interest of school children. Dr. Paul McHugh from Johns Hopkins said of transsexualism, quote, "It is a disorder of the mind, not a disorder of the body." Psychiatrist Dr. Rich Fitzgibbons said, "It is a fixed false belief which is a manifestation of a serious thinking disorder, specifically a delusion." Transsexualism is identity confusion, often after a sexual abuse history, which I can confirm, having been a counselor for many years, and no amount of plastic surgery will ever change a person's sex. It is delusional to think that a person's sex can change, as a person's DNA does not change, heart and lung capacity do not change, and many other biological features of people do not change. Implementing a transsexual program in the schools brings in the topic of deciding a sexual identity to a child or to children who are developmentally unable to process abstract ideas. Jean Piaget and other developmental psychologists have demonstrated that children often think in concrete ways, and when you introduce abstract ideas, all you get is confusion, which I don't think we want. Transsexualism is also connected with high rates of suicide, and I can tell you that as a counselor, this is true, not because society does not accept transsexuals, but because transsexualism gives a false promise to a confused person that if they remove their genitals and cross-dress, they will be complete and whole. This is a lie which I've seen repeated over and over again, with the client feeling more empty after surgery than before, and thus many attempt suicide. What's needed is therapy for confused persons, not a curriculum based on a delusion. Discussions related to controversial sex topics like this are best left to parents. Thank you.
So since Mr. Minnie yielded his time, we do have time for one additional speaker. Is anyone else that has not signed up that would like to speak? Okay, yes ma'am. Just make sure to state your name so we can have that on the record.
Hi, I'm Brianna Bartnett. I go to Jefferson Forest, and all this stuff about, I obviously don't have speech, but all this stuff about guys going in girls' bathrooms, everything about transgender, gay, it makes a lot of people who aren't this stuff really uncomfortable, and I feel really uncomfortable having guys going into our bathroom, because not saying that guys at JF are not good people, but I know some of them who will use this as an excuse to go into the girls' bathroom just to get looks, okay? So that will happen, and guys will use this as something that, oh, I won't get in trouble for it, I'm just gonna go and do it. And that's not something that needs to happen, and like someone said, it's a sin. Transgender is a sin. God made you the way you are, and He wants it to be that way. Just take that and be gracious for it, because He made you perfect. And everything like this is just wrong. And thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Brianna. Thank you to everyone for coming out and sharing your thoughts tonight, and especially Eden and Brianna. Thank you. I know public speaking is a little scary sometimes, but good for you getting an early start. All right, so with that, we will move into approval of the consent agenda. So do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda except for section 7.06 as requested prior by Mr. Hill.
Okay, so we're voting on 7.01, 02, 03, 04, and 05. And we'll do 7.06 separately. Okay. So we have a motion on the bulk of the consent agenda. I'm sorry, that was your motion, wasn't it? I'm sorry. I say I'm playing from behind today. We do have a second on that. Second by Mr. Leamy. Any discussion on that?
Mr. Chairman, I think we wanted to remove employee number 42 from the personnel due to duplicate.
That is correct, yes. So Dr. Mealy, would you like to amend your motion to exclude employee 42?
Yes. Do you want me to repeat it?
I think that should be fine. Yeah. Okay. So 7.01, 02, 03, with the exception of employee number 42 and 7.05. Okay. Great. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Dr. Hicks? Any opposed? Great. The consent agenda as amended is approved. All right, 7.06, appointment of Special Education Advisory Committee members. Do we have a motion on that?
Mr. Chairman, is there a way for us to vote on these number 1, number 2, number 3, or is it a all or nothing?
You could vote on them individually. Will of the board? Okay. Yeah, then we can absolutely do that. Do you have a motion?
So my motion is to vote on these individually, based on number 1, number 2, and number 3.
Sure. Okay. So in that case, do we have a motion to approve individual number 1, Ms. Beth Hine, to represent the Liberty Zone on the Special Education Advisory Committee?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Hill. Do we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Hill, a second by Ms. Hairston. Discussion? I'll call for vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, so Ms. Hine is unanimously added to the Special Education Advisory Committee. Do we have a motion on individual number 2, Becky Wajela from the Forest Zone?
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Hill. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Dr. Mealy. Any discussion on that one? If not, all those in favor of candidate number 2, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right. Ms. Wajela, and I apologize if I am butchering your name, as I probably am, is approved unanimously. All right. We have a motion on candidate number 3. We have a motion by Mr. Leamy. Do we have a second?
Second.
A second by Ms. Hairston. Any discussion on that? If not, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Nay.
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 All right, Ms. Johnson, could you please poll the board on that?
Ms. Hairston?
No.
I'm sorry, ma'am.
No.
Thank you. Dr. Hicks?
Yeah.
Mr. Hill?
No.
Mr. Johnson?
No.
Mr. Leamy?
Yes.
Dr. Mealy?
No.
There are 4 nays. So the nays have it.
Okay. So candidate number 3, Jessica DeBoard, is not approved. So will the committee bring another recommendation for that slot to our August meeting? Or what's the process for that?
That is something the CAC has to vote on as we get applicants, and
Okay.
so as applicants come in, that would be something they would bring back to the board.
Okay. Okay, great. So we'll be on the lookout for that one then at a future meeting. Okay. Great, thank you. Great. Superintendent's comments. Dr. Bergen.
Chairman. Let me just thank all the parents, grandparents, citizens who are in attendance here, your participation in our board meeting. Appreciate that. I'd also welcome a chance to meet you and speak with you as I'm able. As the new superintendent, I have shared online on our school news and website a entry plan where I am in a public library each Tuesday to meet with citizens, whoever would like to come and meet with me between 5:30. We've been advertising it to end at 7, and I've been in the parking lot as late as 8:30 or 9 o'clock. So we've been closing up the libraries and then having the meeting after the meeting in the parking lot. There are two questions that I have for our citizens that I keep asking, and I'm listening for our parents and our grandparents and our business owners and our faith leaders and our students, our staff. What is it that you love about Bedford County that you want your new superintendent to know? Which I would call our strengths that we can build on together. And what are your concerns about Bedford County Public Schools, what I call areas of growth? And then we can tackle our challenges together through conversation. So I've had 3 of these meetings. I'll just share the dates. Again, all this information is on our website. So as you leave here and you think, gosh, I want to go to one of those libraries on a Tuesday, I'll be at Stewartsville on July 13. I'll be at Montville on July 20. And I'll be up in Big Island on July 27. So look forward to seeing you there if you are so inclined. Again, we start at 5:30. There's no agenda. It is an open floor. I start with those 2 questions and then we just share out with the group. Tonight, we have a number of new administrators to introduce to the board, and many of them are here in the room, I think, maybe some in the seats and maybe some along the aisle there. 17 new administrators have been approved by the board between tonight's personnel report and last month's, and I would like to recognize these new administrators one at a time. So the 17 include, because of the reorganization plan that the board approved, 2 new executive directors and 1 new director who have assumed their seats here at the table tonight. We're going to recognize them in just a minute. 5 supervisors, most of them within curriculum and instruction. We referenced some of them earlier tonight, science, math, social studies, special education. I'm going to be introducing them as well. We have 3 new principal assignments. 2 are current principals that will be in new schools this year, and then we have 1 individual who is new to us, assuming a new principalship, and 4 new assistant principals. So it's a lot of bio, but I really am looking forward to introducing these individuals to the community and to the board. So I'll take them in the order that I just shared. I will mention 6 of these 17 individuals were not able to be present because they're on vacation. Good, I hope everybody has a chance to take a vacation and breathe some during the summer. So I'll read their biographical information, but they're not here to be recognized. The other 11 we're anticipating are in the room. We'll find out in just a minute. And if you're one of those 11 and you brought a guest, after I read your biographical information, I'll ask you if you have someone that you would like to turn to and introduce as your guest. So when I read your name, if you'd kindly stand so that everyone can put their eyes on you. So we'll begin right here around the table with the new executive directors, Dr. Calvert. Yes, ma'am. So Dr. Leanne Calvert is a familiar face to all of you. Through the reorganization plan and through your action at the previous board meeting, you have approved Dr. Leanne Calvert as our Executive Director for Human Resources and Talent Development. Dr. Calvert has been an employee of Bedford County Public Schools since 2001. And for the past 2 years, she has served this school board faithfully as the Director of Recruitment and Retention. Prior to that role, she served as principal and assistant principal at Jefferson Forest High School and began her teaching career as a math and chemistry teacher for Lynchburg City Schools. She earned her bachelor's degree in mathematics from Fairmont State University, a master's degree in educational leadership, and a graduate certificate in literacy studies and a doctorate in education leadership studies, all from Lynchburg College. Congratulations, Dr. Kennedy. Any guests tonight?
No.
Well, we're all here in support of you. Congratulations. Dr. Cornett. Another very familiar face to our community, Dr. Josh Cornett, through your action board members, has been named our Executive Director for School Administration. Dr. Cornett spent 18 years in education, all of them right here in Bedford County. The last 6.5 years, he served as principal of Stanton River High School. Prior to serving as principal, he was assistant principal at Stanton River High School, as well as an assistant principal at Jefferson Forest High School and a math teacher at Jefferson Forest High. In 2008, Josh was named Teacher of the Year for Jefferson Forest High School. Dr. Cornett earned his bachelor's degree in mathematics from Bluefield College. He has a master's degree in educational leadership from Lynchburg College, and he holds a doctorate in educational leadership and policy studies from Virginia Tech. Congratulations, Dr. Dr. Sean Trosper, also a familiar face to our community. Dr. Trosper, through the board's action, has been named our new Director of Secondary Education and CTE. Sean, Dr. Trosper, has been employed by Bedford County Schools since 2006. He began his career at Liberty High School and remained there for 7 years, where he taught social studies, coached baseball and basketball. In 2012, he was hired as assistant principal of Stanton River Middle School and served in that position for 4 years. He then was principal of Manita Elementary from 2016 to 2018, at which time he became the first principal of the then brand new Liberty Middle School. And then, shortly thereafter, was named principal of Liberty High School, where he served the 2019-20 and 2020-21 school years. Dr. Trosper earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Social Sciences and a Master's degree in Administration and Supervision, both from Liberty University. And he also holds his doctorate in Educational Leadership and Policy Studies from Virginia Tech University. Congratulations, Sean. Next, I'd like to introduce you to 5 new supervisors, several of whom are here with us this evening and some who could not be here due to their vacations. I believe Audrey's in the room. Audrey Bowyer. Ms. Audrey Bowyer has been named Bedford County Supervisor of Mathematics. She spent 17 years in education, the last 10 in Bedford County, and most recently serving as administrator of Bedford Connects. Also been an instructional coach and Algebra 1 teacher at Stanton River Middle School. Prior to her time in Bedford County, Ms. Bowyer served as an 8th grade math teacher for Roanoke City Schools, a 7th grade gifted math and history teacher for Gwinnett County in Georgia, and an 8th grade math teacher also in Georgia at Madison County Schools. She earned her bachelor's degree in middle grades education with a concentration in math and history from Emmanuel College and a master's degree in administration and supervision from Averett University. Congratulations, Audrey. Many people here in support of you. Congratulations, Audrey. Crystal Belong. So I think this young lady's familiar to most of us in the room.
We've seen her a couple times.
Couple times.
Who is she again?
She speaks a lot.
Ms. Crystal Belong, through your actions tonight, board members on the first report, is now serving as our supervisor for history, fine arts, and world languages. Ms. DeLong has spent 23 years as a social studies teacher. 6 years of those were overseas in Turkey and Morocco. And the remaining 17 years have all been right here in Bedford County Public Schools. She started her career at Stanton River Middle School and has spent the last 9 years at Liberty High School, during which time she was honored to be the 2017 Virginia Region 5 Teacher of the Year. She has taught 20 different social studies courses in her career. She served as a department chair, an AP reader, a curriculum writer, and she has led both division and state level professional development. Ms. DeLong earned her bachelor's degree in history from Roanoke College, a master's degree in international education from the University of Bath, and that's in the UK. She's currently working on her educational leadership with JMU, and she has served on numerous Department of Education and advanced placement committees, most recently on the African American Commission on History Education. Congratulations to you on your appointment. Okay. I was just asking, did you have a guess you wanted to do? That's one, all right. Carmen Johnson. Hello, Carmen. So this is a new face for us board members. This is Miss Carmen Johnson, who you have now named to be the supervisor for pre-referral and compliance in our Office for Special Education Services. Ms. Johnson has 8-year career in education, the last 3 of them right here in Bedford County, serving as a special education teacher at Forest Middle School. Prior to her time in Bedford, she served as a classroom teacher in Campbell County at Yellow Branch Elementary School, and prior to that was a classroom teacher in Stafford County at Stafford Elementary and in Fairfax County at Belvedere Elementary. She earned her bachelor's degree in special education general curriculum from the University of Lynchburg and earned a master's degree in early childhood special education also from the University of Lynchburg. Congratulations, Carmen, on your appointment. Anyone to introduce? No, ma'am. All right, not attending tonight, but I would like to recognize Jean Marie Johnston for her appointment under your action at the previous board meeting. 26 years, Jean Marie has worked here for Bedford County in our school buildings, and she is now moving into a central office role as our supervisor for federal grants, which was the position that Randy was sharing with you earlier. She started with Bedford County Public Schools as a 6th grader. I get that right, as a 6th grader, okay. And subsequently then graduated from Jefferson Forest High School. After earning her BA in English at Randolph-Macon Women's College, she began teaching English at Jefferson Forest High School. She earned a master's in administration and supervision from the University of Virginia, and for 9 years she has served as an assistant principal at Jefferson Forest High School, and for the past 2 years as principal of Liberty Middle School. We congratulate Jean Marie on her new appointment as supervisor of federal grants. Also not able to attend here tonight, but I did want to introduce you to a new member of Bedford County in the role of supervisor for science and computer science, Miss Allison Kapler. And she is also on vacation, not able to be here tonight. We're very excited about Ms. Kapler joining our team. She has served as an instructional technology resource teacher, or ITRT, for Lynchburg City Schools for the past 9 years. She is also at the state level a facilitator for Code VA, or Code Virginia, for the past 2 years, which, if you're not familiar with that organization, they focus on providing equitable computer science across all of Virginia. Mrs. Kapler served as a classroom teacher prior to becoming an instructional technology resource teacher at Heritage Elementary School in Campbell County. She earned her bachelor's degree in elementary education from Liberty University, and she holds her master's in science education from the University of Lynchburg. So we're very happy to have Allison Kapler join our instructional team. So that rounds out our supervisors. I'll now move on to 5 principal announcements. Is Mr. Tucker in the room? There you are, Justin. Through your action board, Mr. Justin Tucker is now following Dr. Trosper as the new principal of Liberty High School. Mr. Tucker has served the students of Bedford County as a social studies teacher, an instructional facilitator, an assistant principal, and is an experienced principal. Mr. Tucker taught at Bedford Middle School and at Stanton River High School, and he has served as an administrator at Stanton River Middle School since 2016. In 2014, he was named Stanton River High School's Teacher of the Year. He earned his bachelor's degree in social sciences and secondary education, as well as a master's degree in administration and supervision, both from Liberty University. Congratulations, Mr. Tucker, on your appointment to Liberty High School principal. Do you have someone you'd like to introduce?
My wife, Christy.
I'm sorry that our next appointment could not be here so that you could meet her because she is new to Bedford County, but we'll bring her back at a future board meeting so you can lay eyes on her. Mrs. Darcy Parker has been named the next principal of Stanton River High School, follow Josh Cordak. Mrs. Parker has a 17-year career in education. The last 6 of those years, she has served as an assistant principal at Ocean Lakes High School in Virginia Beach. And prior to her time at Ocean Lakes, Mrs. Parker served as an administrator at Lansdowne High School and as a classroom teacher at Renaissance Academy and Lansdowne Middle School, all of them in Virginia Beach. She earned her bachelor's degree in biology and performing arts from Mary Washington College and holds a master's degree in educational leadership and administration from George Washington University. She is coming home. Mrs. Parker, for those of you who may have attended Stanton River High School in the early 1990s would have known her as Darcy Hart. And so her family still lives in Stanton River, and she and her beautiful family are relocating back home to Bedford so that she can be the next principal of Stanton River High School. Very proud of her. Congratulations, Darcy. She's probably listening in, so we welcome her. Next, and also not able to attend because she's on vacation, is the new principal of Stanton River Middle School. She'll be familiar to the Stanton River Middle School community because she's currently there as the assistant principal, and that's Mrs. Jessica Geyer. Very proud to share with the community that Jessica Geyer will be following Mr. Tucker at Stanton River Middle School. Mrs. Geyer is entering her 19th year in education. She has served as an assistant principal at Stanton River Middle School for the past 3 years and has been a part of the Bedford County Public Schools team since 2015, where she previously served as a history teacher at Bedford Middle. Mrs. Geyer began her teaching career with Hanover County in 2002 and served in various capacities including special education, athletics, and leadership positions. She earned her bachelor's degree in early childhood development from Lynchburg College. She holds a master's degree in special education from VCU with Virginia Commonwealth University, as well as a master's degree in educational leadership from the University of Lynchburg. So congratulations to Mrs. Geyer on her appointment as the next principal of Stanton River. Next, not new to Bedford County, but new to Bedford County administration is John A. Lee. John A., are you in the room? There she is. Welcome. John A. Lee, through your action at the last board meeting, board members, has been named the principal of Manita Elementary School. Mrs. Lee was born and raised right here in Bedford. She's a graduate of Liberty High School, and she has 24 years of experience in education. Those last 6 years have been in neighboring Roanoke City, serving as an elementary special education coordinator, a middle school special education coordinator, lead special education coordinator for the school division, and most recently as an assistant principal. Prior to this time, Mrs. Lee served as an English teacher in Lynchburg City, as well as being a GED instructor and high school diploma coordinator for the Department of Labor, and a special education teacher here in Bedford County. She holds her bachelor's degree in childhood development for grades 4 through 8 from Lynchburg College, has an endorsement in special education from Old Dominion Universities, and her master's in administration and supervision is from Liberty University. We're just so thrilled to welcome John A. Lee as the next principal of Manita Elementary. Not able to attend, but we wanted to share with the community that a familiar face and a current principal, Kevin Spalding, will be moving to Montvale Elementary. Mr. Spalding, after volunteer teaching for 1 year in Wilmington, Delaware, began his teaching career here in Bedford County in 2009 as a third grade teacher at New London Academy. After 2 years at New London, Mr. Spalding taught 6th grade and then 5th grade at Montvale, where he's now going back to lead as principal, until 2016, at which time he was named assistant principal of Bedford Elementary. In 2018, he became the principal of Manita. He had earned his bachelor's degree in human development and interdisciplinary studies from Lynchburg College. He has a master's degree in special education from Mary Baldwin College, as well as a master's degree in educational leadership from Lynchburg College. So congratulations to Kevin on his new appointment to Montvale Elementary School. And then last but certainly not least, we have 4 new assistant principal assignments. And most of these, I believe, are from retirements and folks moving out of the area. Yeah, I didn't hear too many, couple assistant principals moving on. So we'll begin with Lisa Wilson. Mrs. Wilson has been appointed as assistant principal of Goodview Elementary School. He has spent her entire 27 years of education right here in Bedford County. Thank you for that, Mrs. Wilson. She served 4 years as a classroom teacher at Bedford Elementary, And between 98 and 2018, she served as an instructional facilitator, principal designee, classroom teacher, and mentor at Big Island Elementary. In 2018, she moved to Montvale Elementary to serve in the capacity as a facilitator for the Success for All program. In 2020, she was appointed as the Assistant Program Administrator for Bedford Connects, and she was awarded Teacher of the Year in both 2013 and 2016. She earned her bachelor's degree in early childhood education from Lynchburg College and a master's degree in administration and supervision from the University of Lynchburg. So congratulations to you, Lisa, on your appointment as Assistant Principal of Goodview. Supported here by her friends. Thank you. All right. Tawana Hancock. Tawana, welcome. Mrs. Tawana Hancock has been named Assistant Principal at Jefferson Forest High School. She has 18 years' experience as an educator. The last 3.5 years have been right here in Bedford County, where she has served as a long-term substitute teacher at Bedford Middle School, an English teacher at Liberty Middle School, and for this last year was the lead teacher for instruction at Jefferson Forest High School, where we're now naming her as assistant principal. Prior to her time in Bedford, Mrs. Hancock worked in Lynchburg City, serving as a supervisor for professional learning, coordinator for student learning and success, and as a classroom teacher at Bedford Hills Elementary. Prior to that, she served as a thinking maps trainer, as well as a classroom teacher at Fox Road Elementary School, Turner Creek Year-Round Elementary, Morrisville Year-Round Elementary, and West Cary Middle School. I believe all those are in Wake County? Yes. In 2008, Mrs. Hancock became a national board certified teacher in the area of middle childhood generalist. She holds a bachelor's degree in human development with an early childhood education concentration from Virginia Tech, as well as a master's degree in curriculum and instruction from Virginia Tech. She also earned a master's degree in educational leadership with a PK-12 administration and supervision focus from Lynchburg College. And if that wasn't enough, she's currently working on her doctorate in leadership studies from the University of Lynchburg. Congratulations, Mrs. Hancock, on being named assistant principal at JF.
This is my huge supporter, my husband, Kenneth.
Not able to be here with us tonight, also being on vacation, I would like to share with the board and the community that Mrs. Sarah Yost has been named Assistant Principal of Liberty Middle School. She's not right. Okay. Mrs. Yost has 21 years in education. The first 7 she worked as a middle school teacher in Fulton County, Georgia, and as an elementary school teacher in Gwinnett County, Georgia. She moved back to Bedford in 2007, and her first 3 years in Bedford she worked at the Alternative Education School. From 2010 to 2020, she called Stanton River Middle her home school. There she taught U.S. history, civics, and pre-algebra. She also served as their PBIS coach, behavior coach, and student consultative team coordinator. Most recently, she returned to her alma mater, Liberty High School, as the instructional technology coach. Mrs. Yost earned a bachelor's degree in interdisciplinary studies from Bluefield College and earned her master's degree in administration and supervision from Averett University. Again, she is the incoming assistant principal at Liberty Middle School. Congratulations to Sarah Yost. Last but certainly not least is Christina Moxley. There she is. Christina Moxley has been named assistant principal at Stanton River High School. She has served in Bedford County schools for the past 5 years, and prior to that worked in higher education as an advisor for 5 years. Mrs. Moxley served the Stanton River community for 4 years as a social studies teacher at the middle school, where she was named Teacher of the Year in 2020. This past year, she served as the lead teacher at Forest Middle School. She earned her bachelor's degree in social science from Liberty University, has a master's degree in secondary education, also from Liberty University, and just recently completed her educational leadership program through Longwood University. Congratulations, Christina Moxley, new assistant principal at Stanton River High School.
This is my guest, my husband, Rich.
Chairman, I think I counted 3 TAC grads and only 1 UVA grad. And a lot of
Odds are getting
Liberty and
better.
a lot of Lynchburg.
A lot of Lynchburg, a lot of Liberty University.
Yeah.
Nice assortment of the great schools we have in the Commonwealth.
Yes, we have great schools in the Commonwealth, and just so pleased with all of these new administrators and appreciate the board's support of our recommendations for these fabulous administrators. Congratulations to all of you, and thank you to your spouses and friends who are here tonight. And I apologize in advance for the many hours we're going to keep them with us during the workday. Thank you for your support. Back to you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Dr. Bergen, and on behalf of the board, to everyone taking on a new position, congratulations. We're excited. We hope that you enjoy your new role, and I just have to say, as in a personal aside, we often say that the river is rising. It sounds a little tonight like the river has risen so much it's starting to overflow and spread throughout the county. So we look forward to sharing some of the good work that we're doing at the river with all of our sister schools around the county. You know I couldn't let that one slide down. Now that's it. The staff and items not addressed in the 5 o'clock session. I believe we are back to the newly appointed Dr. Josh Cornett to talk about lacrosse funding.
All right, this time. Good evening once again. Tonight, I'm sharing information requested at the last school board meeting regarding lacrosse. Since the June meeting, staff worked with high school principals and athletic directors to obtain data for estimated costs for adding boys and girls, JV and varsity lacrosse teams to all 3 BCPS high schools. Feedback was also obtained from Liberty and Stanton River for interest in developing lacrosse programs. Because Jefferson Forest High School already has a program developed, the estimated cost per year for boys and girls JV and varsity lacrosse teams would be $31,200 per year. This includes $16,200 for coaching stipends, $10,000 for transportation, and $5,000 for the replacement and reconditioning of equipment. There would not be any additional cost for startup equipment, as this would be donated from the current program. Because of this, the first year estimated cost would be the same as the annual estimated cost moving forward. In addition to the estimated cost associated with funding a lacrosse team at JFHS, Liberty and Stanton River High Schools would require $20,000 per school for a one-time startup expense for equipment and approximately $2,000 per year per school for resodding the fields around the goal areas each year because they do not have a turf playing surface. The first year estimated cost per school would be $48,200 per school, and annual cost moving forward would be approximately $33,200. So in total, the first year estimated cost to add lacrosse programs as a VHSL sports at all 3 schools would be approximately $127,600, and the annual estimated cost after year 1 would be approximately $97,600. So when obtaining feedback from both LHS and SRHS, both schools were very concerned that lacrosse would pull athletes from other spring sports for which they already struggle with recruitment. You can see the enrollment number as well as the number of spring sport athletes at each school. Both Liberty's and Stanton River's numbers are significantly smaller than JF's. I will add that since becoming SRHS principal in February of 2015, I've had around 4 to 5 students casually approach me concerning a lacrosse team or a lacrosse program at SRHS. Dr. Trosper reported that he has had no one express interest to him concerning lacrosse at LHS during his 2-year tenure. JFHS first implemented lacrosse as a club sport in 2013. They were on probationary status for 3 years, and in 2016, JFHS lacrosse was first recognized as a VHSL associated sport. There have been 9 years since first implementation to get their current level. It does take time to develop a strong JV and varsity program if there is student interest. There are some exceptions, but schools locally who currently have lacrosse programs are typically larger schools. Schools who currently have the lacrosse programs include William Byrd, Hidden Valley, Cave Spring, Franklin County, Patrick Henry, Christiansburg, Blacksburg, EC Glass, Salem, and Rockbridge County. Another concern that was identified by Liberty and Sand River was the lack of adequate practice field space. JFHS currently transports to Thomas Jefferson Elementary School for practice fields. Currently, the SRHS boys soccer team practices in the front lawn of Stanton River Middle School beside Route 24. The LHS varsity soccer teams currently share one field. The addition of lacrosse teams would require either transportation to another location or light installation for current spring sport practice fields. An estimate for the cost of lighting practice fields has been requested. If all site locations could be secured, there may be additional costs for field maintenance and transportation. The last concern that was identified was the lack of an established lacrosse youth feeder or recreation program for both Stanton River High School and Liberty High School. Forest Rec has a youth lacrosse program as well as several travel organizations embedded in their area. So it was apparent that both schools are very supportive of the advancement of the JFHS boys and girls lacrosse programs. Administratively, we are supportive of JFHS becoming a funded VHSL sport, and we are supportive of community organizations offering clinics and camps to determine if there are any interest in Stanton River and Liberty High School communities. We'll be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah. So Marcus, are you ready?
I'm waiting.
Oh, you're waiting, okay. So would anyone like to go first while Mr. Hill
Okay.
listens? Okay.
I'm kind of bottom line kind of guy, so is there not student interest in Stanton River Liberty High School for lacrosse programs?
Based on the feedback, not at this time.
How is that information collected?
Through the athletic directors and principals.
So they actually reached out to the student body at both schools to gauge interest?
My understanding is they reached out to the coaches, the spring coaches. They did not reach out to students.
Okay, well, if you're reaching out to the spring coaches, they're gonna be like, not only no, but heck no. You can't have my soccer player to play lacrosse. You can't have my baseball player to play lacrosse. I mean, we need to reach out to the students, not to the coaches. Come on. You're a principal, you know the deal. We need to reach out to the kids. I have no issue with JF moving forward, none whatsoever. They've got an established program. But I want a true feeling for student interest in lacrosse at both schools. We don't have that right now. We have the words of the coaches, not that I'm questioning them, but I think that they have a parochial interest in protecting their own turf, no pun intended. So we need to reach out to the kids, period.
Yeah, and I would agree. And maybe we weren't clear enough in the presentation. So here's my take. There isn't an established presence of lacrosse in those two zones. There aren't any opportunities, Mark, for 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds or 14-year-olds or 16-year-olds, to our knowledge, to play lacrosse. So we're supportive of helping the community to gauge if there is interest. If there are kids who want to play lacrosse, we're going to have lacrosse programs in those schools.
We need to find that out, though.
We do need to find it out. So we're proposing that we go into the community, we offer clinics. JF said they would help to fund those clinics and coach those clinics. We'll go into the communities and say, who's interested? Raise your hand, show up. Here's a basket. Yeah, I'm not a lacrosse player. The concern, honestly, the numbers were up on the screen. Between all of the sports, if we have 15 or 18 or 28 or 35 kids who say, I want to play lacrosse, we'll have a lacrosse program. It's very likely that we won't have a JV soccer team or a baseball team or track and field or any number of the spring sports, there just aren't enough kids. There's just 131 kids. So you would have no bench. I mean, we could probably put teams together for all of those sports and there'd be no one on the bench if there was an injury because there's just there's so many programs now. But the kids should pick what they want to play, right? So if we lose the baseball program or we lose the track and field because the kids are more interested in lacrosse, so be it. But Marcus, how long has lacrosse been nurtured in the zone there?
13 years.
13
At
years.
least 13 years.
Yeah, and so it's not gonna, we don't anticipate it'll happen overnight. But within a couple of years.
We need to hear from the kids.
We do. And so we're proposing that we will have clinics. They'll be open to anybody. We're gonna take our friends up on their offer to help coach those clinics and lead those clinics and determine if there is true interest in Stanton River and Liberty, and then we will build up a program there. We did want the board to know what the costs are. Randy, you'll correct me if I'm wrong. We already spend over $1 million a year in athletics. And this is another $100,000 on top of that. So this is $1.1 million towards athletics to add another program across, which if that's the will of the board and there's community interest, that's the direction we would go.
Where do we get that money from?
For next year, for the JF program next year, since it wasn't budgeted, but there is club money available. What was in the budget is the $10,000 for transportation, so that's already taken care of, it's already in the budget. So, Josh, what was the number for JF next year? 31, so we need 21, and actually in the club sport itself, I think they had $27,000, which they said they would turn over. So really, next year's not an issue. The next year, we'd have to put a little bit more money in there for just the JF, and if other programs came available, that would have to make it in the budget in the future.
And where would you propose that we get that money from? Suggestions on?
In the future budgets, if we say we're gonna support a varsity sport at any school that has the interest in that, once it gets up and running, we just have to put it in the budget. Just like electrical, it has to go in there. And it's not taking from somewhere else, it takes new revenue to do that. So any new revenue would go to that first, because you have to fund that, the board, if the board takes action on that. That would be a committed cost I have to build in going forward.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir, Mr.
I
Hill.
wanted to check because I knew I had provided some information around grants. And to make the board aware, there is a parent who seeks grants for FYAA lacrosse every year, and so he is a grant writer. He is also seeking for the club sport at JF, but also volunteered his time to also write grants for the other two high schools if a program was, determined.
I would just like to say, part of the reason we have not gauged from students is because they haven't been in school. And I want to take that for Dr. Cornett. I asked him to do the presentation, but I did most of the information gathering as Dr. Francis was leaving, and Dr. Cornett has only been with me about 4 days. So I want to take that, and that's on me. And we will work with our principals to see if we can reach out to students during the summer. Lots of them don't check their emails from us and things like that. But we will gauge, and I think that's, again, what Dr. Bergen and Dr. Cornett were saying, that we are very supportive of our students if they're interested, and wanting to really gauge them when they get on campus, where they're more likely to answer our questions about that. We can certainly survey them this summer and see what results we get, and happy to do that.
Well, I don't have any illusions that we're going to magically create 2 programs from scratch and before the school year. I got that grasp of reality. But my point simply is that we need to ask the kids.
Absolutely, and we are, and thank you for the information on the grants too. Dr. Francis looked into those with me prior to his leaving, and we have to get an established group who are ready to do lacrosse before we can receive grant funding. So I think it's definitely a process that Dr. Cornett is willing to work with the schools to see that interest while we still continue to support JF and their movement forward. So I
think they've got the program. Let's support.
I also want to mention. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep, so Ms. Harrison,
Okay.
I just simply wanted to say, I know that we've talked about this in previous board meetings, and one of the things we talked about was having the JF's lacrosse students speak to the Stanton River High School and the Liberty High School students. I think there's value in having students share their excitement.
Right.
And so I hope that's still gonna be a part of how we're gonna do this and kind of gauging whether those schools are interested, those students are. Okay.
And Ms. Harrison, that's what I was gonna touch base on. So the JF team has offered for September timing, if those two schools are available, for our students at JF and the actual club to come over and do some of those introductions and camps, whatever those two schools are interested in, they are willing to come over and do that. And that's both boys and girls.
Right,
So,
and I think that's one of the reasons Dr. Cornett recommended a clinic, so that they're just not hearing kids talk about it, but actually participating in the play, so they see how it works, because our students in those two zones haven't had that rec experience with lacrosse, so we thought clinics would be a good idea if we could work with JF to provide those.
That's a great idea.
No offense, Mr. Wilson, but I think if Stanton River and JF learn there's another opportunity to possibly beat JF in something, they will be, they'll be happy to try.
We're happy to know.
Great. So, my question is, let's say there is never interest at Stanton River or Liberty sufficient to field a team. Would it be possible to create another team at those schools that they might be interested in? So maybe JF is the lacrosse powerhouse, but Stanton River becomes the Central Virginia fencing champion. Is that something that we could do maybe instead of every school having to have the same exact
We're
sport?
gonna do Cal
But both schools stated that they were very interested and they felt like a need of their communities and schools were to expand the cross-country and track programs into the middle school level to feed the high school level tracking and cross-country. So that did come up in that conversation.
So a nice middle ground there, if there isn't sufficient interest, is maybe expand programs that Liberty and Stanton River want and allow JF to expand the program and develop it into full varsity and JV teams.
But if you do that, we're still gonna compete.
Yeah, no, absolutely, yeah. But you guys, you do you.
We like fencing too. Yeah.
Mr. Chairman,
Are you volunteering to do the fencing coaching?
Do I
Are you
fence?
volunteering to coach the fencing team?
No one would be safe in that. No one. Yes, Dr.
I think
Neely.
that's a great compromise, because I absolutely think we should support JF, but there's a part of me also that thinks that some money should also go to these other schools to expand programs if that's what they think is important. I would prefer not to give money to one school and not the other, so I do want to support the JF program, but I like the option of, if there is not interest, that we can spend that
So maybe this
money
upcoming
elsewhere.
year, this upcoming year could be an exploratory year to see if there is interest to try the clinics out, and if not, then the following year, we could expand cross-country or whatever at the other schools.
So do we agree to that? I mean, I think that's a great idea.
That was my next question. What is our action on that? Do we need any action since you're recommending that we move forward with that program?
Well, we'll capture this in the minutes. This board was very clear in the previous meeting, and we're also affirming, we will have sanctioned VHSL lacrosse at JF High School that this school board will be covering in partnership with the club. They have agreed to turn over their current assets. So there's a fair amount of equipment that does not need to be purchased, and they have some sort of balance to help with the coaching stipends in this first year. So it's an easier year for us to implement. And where Mr. Leamy really started this, we're gonna find out what our students' interests are. So we are committed to doing clinics. Appreciate the reminder of September timeframe, what I heard. So we'll make sure that we're offering clinics to gauge interest, and we'll follow our students. So, to your comment and follow-up comments, if the students don't show interest in lacrosse, but they show interest in something else, we'll nurture that as well. We are all about student athletes, as well as fine arts athletes, as well as FFA participants. The life that happens at the end of the last instructional bell is as important as the life that occurs between the instructional bells. So we're committed to that, yes.
My question is, administratively, what do we need to do to get the ball rolling for JF?
If you don't mind, adding a sport, a varsity sport, is a budget process. It's in policy that it's through a budget process. So if the board has consensus, we can start moving forward, and I would it's as simple as me amending the budget and bringing that club money back into the school system and reappropriating that for varsity lacrosse sports. That is a budget process, and you're adding that in. That has to be built in following years. So if you wanted to move forward with any other sport at any other school, you have to amend the budget. That's the process, that's the policy, that the budget has to be amended to add at any time or through the original budget process. So I'll bring a amendment. The money's there, it just has to be brought in from the school to here. It's really no impact to our budget. The funds will come in and take care of it, and but you'll still take action on a supplemental appropriation.
So can we do that next month? I mean,
Yes, I can bring that next
okay. And then can they, I'm ashamed to say I'm unfamiliar with who they compete with and so forth. Will they be able to establish a varsity schedule for next season?
It's already there.
Okay.
Yeah, they're already competing.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I'm looking at Josh, but I mean, they're already competing.
Yes.
So, okay. I know EC Glass is our biggest rival, you know, of course, being nearby, they are competing.
So we have consensus for this.
Right, do we need to?
But we'll be revisiting this formally in August.
Oh, okay.
I'll bring it back to
We have
you.
We'll ask you to vote on the
consensus.
budget, and it'll be a line item in the budget, and that's how you'll
All right.
show your support publicly for lacrosse being sanctioned VHSL at Jefferson Forest High School in the budget.
Sweet. Look forward to hearing more from the land of the flow and seeing how that goes officially. So, okay, great, thank you. All right, matters and concerns from school board members. Let's start with Dr. Mealy.
I just again want to say
I'm still here.
Congratulations.
for those of you still here, congratulations. I hope they watch this. Oops.
I'll play it next week.
As their first, as an administrator. Oops, okay. So, no, I'm kidding, of course. Just congratulations, and thank you all for all of your work to, get these people in place. I know this has not been easy, but I really appreciate all the work that you've done and the people. I'm very excited about the people that have been brought on board. I'm very excited about the reset of our organization. I just think we're headed in totally a different direction and a much better direction, so I thank you for that. And unbelievably, write this down. I have no other comments. I know, see?
Diana, did you get that?
I did. Write that down.
All my glasses up.
Date and time.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mealy.
May I say just one other
No,
thing?
you said
I know.
you can't spoil it.
Georgia and I were talking on the way here, and I said, "This is unbelievable." I said, "I really don't have any comments tonight."
I can't believe it, I can't believe it.
So, Ms. Harrison, before Dr. Mealy can think of
before she
something else.
jumps in
yes.
there again and with
Sorry.
another comment or something. I just want to echo the same sentiments. I'm just so thrilled with the administrative assignments. Just thrilled. I'm looking forward to all the wonderful, exciting things that's going to take place in our school division this year. So congratulations to all of those who aren't sitting in those seats. Congratulations to you. I also want to just take just a moment to thank Dr. Woodford and the other team in presenting to our community the information regarding our new history SOLs. I appreciate that clarity in which you brought. And also I want to encourage the community. I've received lots of phone calls and emails from members of the community questioning the history SOLs. And so I did advise them to go to the Virginia Department of Ed site, take a look at those SOLs, but now they can actually go to our school site and take a look at that and look at your information that you have. So I would encourage them to do that. That's all that I have.
It's really neat.
Congratulations to the new folks and, or welcome to the new folks, and congratulations to the folks that have moved on to positions of greater responsibility. We're here to support you, so just, let us know what you need. Situational awareness. I want to talk about, I was really pleased with the number of people that turned out tonight. I wish we could see that every meeting. It's important for parents, grandparents, and just any taxpayer to maintain situational awareness regarding what's going on as far as education is concerned. My biggest frustration has been over the years that we see crowds like we do tonight for hot button issues. But we need to see crowds like we had tonight every night so that everyone stays informed. Even if you don't physically come, sit at home, pop your favorite beverage, and watch it on YouTube. But the bottom line is just stay situationally aware of what's going on with us, with admin, and with the schools that your kids or grandparents or relatives are attending. Like Ms. Harrison said, I encourage everybody to go on the website, read the 2 documents that Dr. Woodford presented tonight. That will increase your situational awareness of what's going on. And here's something just totally out of the blue that I've been thinking about. Historically, this board, and it's premature, but historically this board has had dynastic chairmanships where we've had the same chairman for extended periods of time. I think it's time we shake that up a little bit. I think it's time that we share the wealth and we allow other members to be chair, vice chair, bring new blood in, and give everybody the opportunity to sit in that hot seat. Because when you got people like Mr. Hill wanting to amend this and that, and you're trying to figure out where to put everything, it's really interesting. Twice. You're an easy target. So just something to think about. December, January timeframe, we can revisit this, and all right, just think about it. All right. That's all I have.
And I was saying that was twice tonight. Johnson has called me out for dinner. And then you called me out, but that's okay, I'm here. I'm here all day.
Maybe that's the real hot seat over there.
There you go. All right, so really excited to see Miss Manley's update this week about 30-year-old carpet coming out of Forest Elementary School. I know that sounds like a broken record, but that's good stuff. For anybody that's been in those schools and smelt that carpet, it's time. So thank you to the board for us approving that and actually seeing that take place. That's good stuff. You'll hear me until we do it. Meetings at different schools. We need to be in our communities. Love this boardroom, but we need to be out in the schools. So any opportunity that we can have these board meetings throughout our zones, I think it's important. I think we'll have bigger crowds like we did tonight when we go to them versus us expecting for them to come here. Had an opportunity with Dr. Bergen to go to Boonesboro Elementary to read to our learners. I was expecting to tag along with Dr. Bergen. However, I got through in the hot seat and I also read to our learners. So it was fun. It was a good trip. Also, attended one of the Tuesday night meet and greets at Forest Library. I want to publicly thank our Board of Supervisor, John Sharp, for also attending that meeting. I thought it was a great meeting to hear from our constituents, parents, grandparents. It was really a good meeting, so enjoyed tagging along there. One of the other things that I am most proud of this year, because one of my kids got to participate, our JF boys varsity soccer team was the runner-up for our state championship over in Smithfield, Virginia. Very exciting season, went in at 15-0 to the state championship. We didn't get what we wanted, but it was an awesome season. So very proud of them. I think we will see them in the next couple of meetings, hopefully, to put a spotlight on them. So that is all from me.
Dr. Hicks.
Hi again. I'd also like to congratulate the JF soccer team for being the state runners-up. And I'd also like to say welcome to all the new directors, principals, ADs, and supervisors. That's all.
Great, thank you, sir. Would like to begin by thanking Mr. Leaney for filling in for me when I was a little late. Found out last night I actually have Lyme's disease. So I am moving a few steps slower than normal, so I appreciate his patience and everyone else's patience as I'm trying to think through things a little bit slower pace than I'm used to. But hopefully I will be back to full speed soon. In the meantime, however, I would like to congratulate Charlie Moser of Liberty High School and Emma Jackson of Stanton River for being 1/3 of our Virginia State FFA leadership team. We had a little discussion as to, was this the first time one county's produced so many leaders? But we were told it was not. We may have been beat out by one of our neighboring counties, but I'm not going to say which one it was. But it was the first time, I believe, that one county has produced the 2 top leaders in state FFA. So congratulations to them on that. I know they've both had very long and successful careers at their FFA chapters, and looking forward to watching them get to travel the state now that COVID restrictions are easing and they can actually travel and share their knowledge and their wisdom with FFA chapters across the state. Speaking of FFA, Dr. Bergen and I got to attend the Bedford County Ag Board meeting last night, and they got to meet Dr. Bergen and ask him a few questions and talk to him, and we got to recognize not just Charlie and Emma, but also all of our county FFA members who have accomplished great things throughout this most unusual school year, and that was wonderful. And Charlie actually helped me solve a mystery by identifying the gender of 2 of my chickens that I adopted. So how often can you say the state FFA president eased my mind that they were hens and not roosters? So soon enough, yeah. It's one of those you stare at them and you're like, am I gonna get eggs? Or do I have to rehome them? So that was a really fun night. So on that note, I do want to thank everyone for coming out tonight and sharing their thoughts. Appreciate it. We appreciate hearing what the community thinks and feels about these issues. And I would also encourage you, please reach out to Richmond, reach out to the governor, reach out to the General Assembly if you have strong feelings about things that are coming out of Richmond, because that's where a lot of these decisions are being made. And so we need you to share your thoughts with them. On that note, Dr. Bergen, were there any other board items that we need to bring back next month? Or board requests that we need to bring back next month?
We have requested last month, I think, for personnel data and discipline data. Is that coming?
No, so I mean, Mr. Haggard's gonna bring back an amended budget so that we can codify across. No, so, I mean, there were other notes I took, but just for myself, but no action that I.
Okay, all right. Okay. In that case, we have a motion to adjourn. So moved. Motion by Mr. Hill, do we have a second? Second by Ms. Hairston. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, hearing none, tonight's meeting is adjourned. See you next month.